Good evening, everyone, and welcome. We're pleased you guys are joining us this evening. Want to share a few reminders. Um, well, make a statement. Director Green will not be here tonight as he is handling some God work at the moment, and so he will not be with us today. Also, a couple reminders. In order to ensure safety, please keep walkways and aisles clear. Please keep any signs below chin level so those seated behind you can see. So what we're going to do is, Superintendent, would you like to introduce the item, the first item?
Good evening, Chair Hollins. Yes, absolutely. Tonight, we are actually pleased to have on display in the boardroom a display of visual art done by many of our Head Start students. And we have a brief video to give us a peek into how our youngest learners actually engage in the arts.
Awesome.
Portland Public Schools Head Start is a preschool program for children ages 3 through 5. We provide high-quality education as well as family support for low-income families throughout Portland.
The Head Start program is awesome. Today, let's learn about one of the parts that makes Head Start great, art enrichment. Art enrichment is an authentic art-making program led by Teacher Tara and Teacher Julia. We travel to 9 sites, 36 classrooms, and capture, motivate, and inspire 600 tiny artists per week.
Being an artist in Portland Public Schools Head Start is just like being an artist anywhere else. We slow down and focus. We explore with new materials and laugh with our friends. We express emotions through art. We examine and discuss historical artworks to find new connections and to inspire us to create our own unique works. We collaborate with other artists. We use materials to generate new ideas. We connect with nature and explore new possibilities. We use art as a tool for social justice. We find joy in creating again and again. This program embodies the core values of Portland Public Schools' strategic plan and targets all domains of the desired results developmental profile, which measures young children's learning and development in PPS pre-K programs. Our learning is inclusive and differentiated to support the developmental needs of every child. When we work on techniques like monotype printmaking, we are challenging ourselves to persist in building layer after layer after layer. Our artwork is inspired by artists who represent our student population and to personify values of respect, creativity, and social justice. We were inspired by artist Yayoi Kusama to explore collaboration on a grand scale. What can we create together that we can't create alone? Over the course of 2 days, 8 classrooms participated in creating this Yayoi Kusama inspired installation. It feels great to be an artist. Bringing this much joy and beauty is only possible with support from you, Portland Public Schools and our school board, and our whole huge, amazing, giant Head Start family. We couldn't do any of this without you.
I just want to express thank you to Tara Carmichael and Julia Himmelstein. I hope I'm saying your names correctly. They're here with us this evening. Thank you so much for producing this video, giving us a little glimpse into how you make visual arts come alive for our youngest scholars, to all our visual arts teachers across the school system. Thank you for continuing to inspire our students.
Thank you, that was awesome. Next, we have Black History Month. Was created to focus attention on contributions of African Americans to the United States. It honors all Black people from all periods of U.S. history and offer us a moment to lift up the rich history of Black Americans. Director DePass, would you like to introduce this resolution?
Sure, and before doing so, if I may read a few remarks. Just personal reflections as Black History Month unfolds. I find myself reflecting on the diverse experiences that have shaped my identity, particularly the intersections of growing up in Portland, Guadalajara, and Washington, D.C. Each of these locations has left an indelible mark on my understanding of history, culture, and the unique challenges faced by Black individuals in these different urban landscapes. It's been enlightening to navigate and experience Blackness from such diverse vantage points. Portland, known for its reputation of progressiveness, has provided a backdrop for both pride and struggle. While the city embraces the slogan of keeping things weird, some argue at the expense of racial progress. Nevertheless, there's a concurrent commitment to the ethos that Black Lives Matter, even as our community's leaders of color face targeted attacks at our workplaces and our homes and cars, and glaring disparities persist, especially for our students, as demonstrated by a greater than 54% achievement gap between white kids and their Black peers in third grade reading scores. This juxtaposition highlights the complexity of being Black in the Pacific Northwest and underscores the ongoing need for activism and social justice efforts, which have deeply influenced my sense of urgency for advocacy, celebrating Black achievement, and celebrating the joy of being Black. My time in Mexico added another layer to my cultural tapestry. Immersed in a society with its own intricate history of race and identity, I gained a deeper appreciation for the nuances of Blackness within a global context. Mexico's rich cultural heritage emphasized the importance of acknowledging and embracing diversity, of deep respect for ancestors, while also prompting necessary conversations around Afro-Latinx identities and experiences. Washington, D.C., as the nation's capital, offered a unique lens through which to view Black history and its enduring impact on American society. The White House was built by enslaved people, and the city's museums and monuments, including the National Museum of African American History and Culture, stand as powerful reminders of the resilience and triumphs of Black Americans. Growing up in these environments and with the supportive family structure that I did, instilled in me a profound appreciation for strength of Black community and the imperative to preserve and share its stories. Black History Month serves as a crucial time for reflection, celebration, and education. It encourages us to explore the diverse narratives within the Black experience, recognizing that Black history is multifaceted and rich with threads of resistance, resilience, innovation, and triumph. This reflection challenges me to engage with the complexities of identity and history, fostering a commitment to ongoing learning and advocacy. In conclusion, as I reflect on this rich tapestry of experience woven through my upbringing in Portland, Guadalajara, and Washington, D.C., I'm reminded of the imperative to understand and honor Black history beyond the confines of Black History Month. Embracing the lessons gleaned from each locale, I invite others to join me in using empowering language and concerted efforts to advance the ongoing narrative of Black excellence. Together, let us strive towards cultivating a community that is truly inclusive and equitable for all. You're welcome. And so, am I introducing the resolution?
Yes.
Trying to get my chicken meatball recipe off my screen.
You might want to share that with everyone.
Shall I just read not the entire proclamation?
Yeah, I'm going to read the whole
Why don't we
thing.
just read the resolution?
Yeah.
And it's very small. The Board of Education of the Portland Public Schools hereby recognizes the month of February 2024 as Black History Month and encourages all educators to commemorate this occasion with appropriate ceremonies, instructional activities, and programs. The struggles and achievements of Black people and their roles in America's history profoundly influences and enriches the culture of the United States. Portland Public Schools acknowledges these contributions and reaffirms its ongoing commitment to building awareness in an inclusive society.
Thank you. Do we have a motion and a second to adopt Resolution 6833?
Second.
Is there any other board discussion?
Thank Director DePass for sharing your story and the framing up comments. Really set the stage for the resolution. Thank you.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure.
Any other board comments? All right. Ms. Brashaw, is there any public comment?
No.
The board will now vote on 6833, proclamation and recognition of February as Black History Month. All in favor indicate by saying yes.
Yes.
Yes. All opposed? Student Director Silverstein, please indicate your vote.
Yes.
All right. Resolution passed or is approved by a vote of 7-0 with Student Director Silverstein unofficially voting yes. All right. Next, we have the update on the superintendent search. Last week, the board voted to hire Human Capital Enterprises to lead the search for our next superintendent. This is an important first step for us to identify the desired attributes for the next superintendent. And we will be updating the website as well with next steps. All right, now we go to the superintendent report.
Well, good evening again, directors and PPS community. I know you were just talking about an update on the superintendent search. Today actually marks my last school board meeting as your superintendent. Next week, my 6.5-year tenure will be coming to a close here at PPS. So just wanted to share a few prepared remarks, starting with, as I shared earlier when announcing my departure, I just want to express my gratitude for the incredible privilege an opportunity to serve as superintendent. I'm grateful for the trust, support, and most importantly, the opportunity to serve and make a difference here in Portland. I'm ending my tenure with deep admiration and respect for the people in our school system, our students, our devoted educators and staff, our school leaders, and our families and community partners, because all of you, PPS is strong. Thank you for everyone collectively for your unwavering commitment to every student, that each and every one of them should have a consistent, high-quality, joyful school experience across every single PPS school. Thank you, directors and staff, for your unwavering belief in doing more and doing better for our students. In particular, our students of color, our emergent bilingual students, and for students with disabilities. Thank you for holding each other accountable for the success of each and every one of our students. I'm grateful to have served in a district that's committed to both excellence and equity. Together, we navigated the challenges of the last few years, of course, the global pandemic, extended school closures, growing student needs. The school system's fortunate to have a capable team of leaders, teachers, and staff that are dedicated to ensuring our students have the opportunity and the supports to thrive. Despite the challenges we've weathered, I believe PPS has the right tools and foundation to continue improving this school system to ensure student learning and success. Directors in this role, you might imagine, like yourselves, I receive a lot of unsolicited notes and messages. As I was cleaning out my desk late last night, I came across a note dated November of 2017 when I was just a few weeks into the job. I received a personal letter from a staff member at Lane Middle School, Mr. Joel Campos, welcoming me to Portland and expressing that he wished my tenure will be llena de éxito y cambios positivos. Que todos unidos lograremos las metas para nuestros alumnos en todas las escuelas. He expressed his hope that in my tenure I would experience success and that there would be many positive changes for our school system. He shares his hope and belief that together we will meet the goals that we have for students all across our schools. My hope is that Joel, who I had the pleasure of meeting in those early months personally, that you're out there enjoying a well-deserved retirement after your service supporting our students as a paraprofessional here at PPS, and that I have left Portland Public a little better as a school system. I remain optimistic about the future of PPS and its students. In the coming days, the team and I will continue onboarding and orienting our interim superintendent, Dr. Sandy Husk. We remain hopeful that the next permanent leader will build on the work accomplished to date and take the school system to the next level. We've come a long way as a school system in a relatively short time, and I look forward to hearing of many more continued successes here at PPS in this next chapter. So with that, thank you, directors, all of you, both past and present, for your support. It's been a privilege to serve as your superintendent. Thank you.
Okay. We appreciate the fact that you guys are. We hear you, but this is not going to be the way to get it done today. So we can ask you guys to make sure that you lower your stuff down. If not, we're going to have to ask you to leave. So we're just going to call for a quick recess and resume in about 5 minutes. Thanks. We left off with the superintendent's report, and so we know there's some comments that board members would love to make to the student.
Or we could just move through the agenda.
So I will open up the floor.
Well, I'll go quick. Thanks. I think I said before when you announced you were leaving that I only do one goodbye, and so I would wait. So this is it, but I'll still make it short because I know I want it to be. I just want to thank you for what you've given the district. I want to thank you personally for welcoming me when I first arrived 4.5 years ago, and hoping you were already here. You had a lot of your team. You were already pretty well established in sort of the strategic plan path you wanted to do, but a lot of that work was still in development. And so it was a really good time, I think, to come in. And I think you talked about the challenges. I think we have to continue to mention those because your tenure here has been full of challenges. And the thing that, and I say this with a little bit of wistfulness, but also it is what it is. It's the reality. There was that moment, sort of pre-COVID, when I feel like we had set new board goals. You had your strategic plan coming together. You had done a lot, not all, but you had done a lot of the sort of reforms, systemic reforms that you were looking for, and we felt poised for to really see the benefits of that. And it was a global pandemic, and you and your team were able to pivot, and you were able to pivot really quickly, and do the best we could. You and I have talked on a very personal level about some things we wish we could have done differently then, but it was operating in real time, right, and moving through that. I started to deal with that, to deal with the funding issues in Oregon, to deal with the labor unrest last fall, and snowstorms, not just this year, but in prior years as well. I mean, your tenure's been filled with a lot of extreme challenges. But I want to keep coming back to, I think, my experience with you and seeing what's happened during your tenure here, this district was in pretty desperate need of some of the systemic changes and reforms that you and your team were able to put in place. And I think that change is hard. We know it's hard. I think we can look at some of the bright spots, the increasing graduation rates we hear, even with the student achievement. We didn't see the declines that other districts saw. We're beginning to see, hopefully, reap some of the benefits. And I'm really hopeful and actually somewhat confident that the changes you were able to put in place, that we're going to reap the benefits for years to come. So I just thank you. I thank your entire team for that. I think we're always in a good place. It's still a lot of work to do. Always a lot of work to do. But thank you. Thank you. Schools. It's been my pleasure to.
Appreciate it. First credit goes to all the folks behind us. Team.
I'll jump in next. I want to thank you also. I'm just going to thank you for the meetings. I mean to say the meetings that we've had outside of here where you've been candid with me about your visions for the district. Yeah, I've enjoyed serving with you. I enjoyed the grace that you showed of me when I was 45 minutes late to our first meeting. So embarrassingly, I got caught 5 stories underground. I couldn't get out. So I appreciate your grace. I've learned a lot from your leadership style. And I want to go back to a statement that my dad made. He was like, yeah, Guerrero, that's warrior, and your name means peace. And together you should be able to do great things. So I appreciate your commitment to this district, your unwavering support for moving racial equity along when even in Portland it's been very, very difficult. Appreciate your comments that you made about how we can actually dig our heels in and dig into actually making change that we need to see that will benefit students. So it's been a pleasure.
So I didn't prepare anything, but it's been educational. I think I came from a unique position. I got to work under you. I remember in PPS during the turmoil, and then when you came in, it was a lot of hope. And one of the things that, as someone who has worked in the district, I really appreciate almost the veracity of commitment that you bring to this district. I wish everyone could see what I saw, because there's a lot of things we disagree on, and starting tearing up because it's been a while. I've been working with you under you for a little bit as well. There's a lot of things we disagreed on, and there were a lot of things that I thought we disagreed on, that when I got to know you better and learned about the issues, I no longer disagreed but understood. I think that I just wish everyone could see that. I wish everyone could see the human side of you, where you were so willing to give. The work here is never done, and you're always so willing to almost sacrifice your health all the time to get as much of the work done as possible. And I think a lot of things that have been going on here have been unfair to you, but I think you took it with poise, and I think this was a challenging job now, and I really am going to miss you. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm pretty much just gonna say everything you said, Andrew. But also, just thank you for welcoming me as a new person, not really knowing what I'm doing on the board. You're a good teacher. You don't tell people what to do, but you show kind of different ways you can look at things. So anyway, it's been wonderful for me. I wish I had more time with you. And I look at some of the things you're doing, particularly my knowledge is early childhood. And I think it's, and I appreciate that you make it happen even when people say, or maybe afraid of change, but you're making it happen. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I was just scrolling through 2017 and those first days, and I didn't precede you by much on at least my second tenure, 15 years before, but came back on the board in July of 2017, and our most important order of business. There were a lot of challenges the board and the district was facing, whether it was dysfunction on the board, an open, sound familiar, PAT contract that had been open for about a year. We had middle school or K-8 students who were getting a vastly different and inequitable set of opportunities versus students in middle schools. We had bond that was off. I don't know if you go through the whole litany, but there were a lot of
Serious
there were a lot of
investigation.
So,
Not on board.
but our most important thing that we had to do was, as a board, and we all knew it, no matter what our, as board members, whether we felt like we could work with each other or not, or we had, very big philosophical differences, we all knew that we were gonna sort of succeed together, and PPS was gonna succeed if we hired a new leader and a new superintendent after Superintendent Smith leaving the year before and then having a whole succession of interim superintendents. We knew that our most important task as a board was to hire a new leader. And there was a big disagreement about whether we did the whole, waited a year, get into the regular cycle. And I still remember Rita and I having like a back and forth about, I felt like if we started this school year without a new leader, like PPS was not gonna get back on track. And we're both very persistent people, but I think I won that one out because it's like we need to get going. And we spent 40 days, we had great candidates, surprisingly, for the job. And I'm glad at the end of the day that you were the candidate that the board landed on and agreed to hire 40 days later. And I will say the 6.5 years, it's like dog years, feels like more than 6.5 years. It's just scrolling through the.
I won't argue with you on that one.
Pardon?
I won't argue with you that one.
Thinking that you then came back several times before you moved here with your, moved up here from San Francisco and helped us open both Fabian and Franklin. And we're here for the start of the school year. I still, every time I see the picture that's still used of that first day of school, going to Boise Elliott with you talking to the kids in the cafeteria. I love that picture, and I love every time I see it because it reminds me of that first day. And also my pictures, I saw a piece that I wrote for the business journal about new school year, new era at PPS, and it was a picture of you arriving at PPS. And those were the happy days because then we just moved right into settling the contract with the teachers, which was really important also to get us started on the right foot for your tenure as superintendent. We knew that we had to do really hard work about opening new middle schools, and probably your first year was all about opening those 2 middle schools. And it was the right thing to do, but it was really hard work, which is why it hadn't been done. There was a lot of really hard work that hadn't been done. And I appreciate that when you got here, you jumped in and helped us do hard work, because an easy thing would have been like, let's do some of the easier work, let me get my feet on the ground, but we just dove right into the hard work. And, the following years, as Andrew mentioned, we really laid the groundwork to move this district for our students, built lots of supports in, and our community rallied behind. And we had a leader with a vision and a board that was united, working with the superintendent, passed the 2019 local option renewal, the 2020 bond, the largest local option in the state, the largest bond in school history, and that, I think, is our community having confidence in and trust in the district and where it was heading, which was very different than when you arrived in 2017. And there's a lot of other things that happened in those years. We settled lots of contracts several times in the 6.5 years. We made a lot of differences. For 20 years, there wasn't a curriculum in PPS, so my kids spent 18 years in PPS with no curriculum, no unified or district curriculum, because the curriculum department had been decimated after ballot measure 5, and that's being built back. So when I look to the future, I know that whoever the next leader is going to be building on your successes. And so, thank you for saying yes and for bringing passion and like, oh my gosh, you worked so hard. So thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Of course, we've persisted together for 6.5 years longer than anybody here at the table.
So, mine might not be what you expect it's gonna be. I'm actually glad you're getting out this toxic ass town. You know, for a man of color, it's rough, and it's tough, and you don't get the benefit that you deserve. You don't get the credit that you deserve, and I'm hoping that, I know when you get down in your next endeavor, all those kudos and flowers is gonna come. Because you're absolutely brilliant man, you're brilliant, and you've shown me what excellence is, as a Latino man as well, right? You know, I know we talk about Black history and Black excellence, but you've shown me excellence. You've shown me the poise when things are said about you and how things is, and it's I'm happy that you did it. You got an exit. And this town will tear you down, and it will beat you down, and I don't want to see any person of color. I want to see you get torn down even more by this town. So I am excited for what your new endeavor is going to be. I love the talks about family, especially about the mom and all the other stuff going to here in public. But it was just great having that, and I just really appreciate you. So thank you for showing that example for me. Yeah. All right. Yeah, I know. I'm get to it. Come on, let's get it. Yes.
I think the first thing that comes to mind when I think of you is commitment, both in your tenure and just like your belief in what is right. And obviously I don't have the same length of experience as some people perhaps, but you know, I grew up through the system. I just want to say thank you because just from my tiny time on the board, it's definitely very difficult, and I cannot imagine what it's like to be the face of the district, the one ultimately in charge. And I know that that is a huge burden, but I also think that you've done a wonderful job treating that like the honor it is. And just like, even though they've been great, the conversations we've had have meant a lot. I think you're going to do wonderfully wherever you go. I'm excited to see what you do, and I think that everyone else in all the places you're going to go are going to be just as grateful to have you this week.
Thank you. And I know you have a bright future ahead of you. Well, the good thing, directors, is you have this high caliber team all around you. So I'll be thinking of all of you and continuing, as I mentioned, to hear of the successes, and I'm going to do my part to help the children and youth of Watts and Boyle Heights as the next leadership opportunity. So I'll be watching from afar.
Hey. Wow, okay. So, well, first of all, happy Black History Month. And as usual, I'm going to start with some celebration. I think it's definitely something we need. So first of all, Benson had 2 teams that went to regionals for the Salmon Bowl, which apparently is like a
Salmon?
Yeah, it's a marine science trivia competition. I think I have that right. Apparently they got 1st and 3rd, so wow. Wells is, they're gonna get more details on this, but they're throwing a glow dance that connects to like the general Portland Lights Festival. Grant and Lincoln's Constitution teams are going to nationals, so that's really exciting. And then multiple schools, Grant, Cleveland, they have Communicare, and they're donating a lot of money towards groups that support domestic violence survivors, combating redlining and climate change, and prisoner reform. So then also at Lincoln, there is going to be a wellness fair next week, and this week they're putting on a BLM Week of Action, which I think is pretty incredible. And then at Franklin, we just had our winter formal, and we also hosted the duck pond competition for high school mock trial. Jefferson has their girls basketball team. I believe they're 2nd in the state. They're doing really, really well. And then at McDaniel, they made progress, which has been a student-led effort by VSC members actually, JJ and Casey, getting incentives for lunch helpers to help the lines go quicker. So I think there's a lot, obviously, that we need to work towards in our district, but I also wanted to take the time to acknowledge how far we've come and the role that students have played in that. So then moving on to not so celebratory stuff. I think that the lack of student voice has been especially apparent this year because there have been so many high-profile issues, but it is a long-term issue, and some of the most recent issues have been the final schedule. I know students were really frustrated about that and that there was no change after the snow days. And then also, you're probably going to hear about this in public comment tonight, but Franklin students are frustrated about curriculum changes. And I think this all really comes back to what you probably guessed is my favorite topic, student voice. Because I think that a lot of these things that we perceive as issues would not be issues if we had more direct inclusion of student voice. I think I've spent every single one of my student rep reports talking about this, and I think not a lot has seemed to change. And I think that there is this idea that it's enough to include students in these conversations to get their feedback later on, maybe feedback about the decisions, or once we've narrowed it down to 2 options, which do you like better? But I think that to truly include student voices, we need to be there from the very beginning. When people are seated around a table having discussions, many of those seats should be for students. And I think that when we're talking with the district student council, that's a big frustration for them because we literally have this advisory council that is meant to do exactly that, to collect student perspectives and bring them to the board, bring them to senior leadership. But I think there is a disconnect there and that's not happening. So, I feel like I talked a lot about the problems, but I wanted to give you all some solutions. So I think really brainstorming how can we use the DSC more effectively, and not just the DSC, because we do our best to represent the students of the district, but every single student has an individual experience. And so creating a more specific and obvious way for students to provide their voice, because I think we have seen that public comment is not sufficient, and unfortunately the way it works, it leaves a lot of things unresolved because it's exhausting to constantly bring up these issues and then not hear anything back. And a lot of the times public comment is meant for after the fact. The board is voting on that thing the next second. That doesn't really provide time for dialogue. So again, saying that students need to be a huge part of every single dialogue in this district, and how can we ensure that's going to happen going forward. And then a little plug here that one way that we're going to be doing this is for the district student council. We're hosting our annual student summit on March 7th at 10 a.m. at Homsey. High school students can RSVP at PBS Student Council on Instagram. The link is in the bio, and posters should be put up around your schools. And that's going to be FaceTime with district leaders and to learn about the topics that are going on in our district. And I think this is a great opportunity, but also alongside that, it needs to be more consistent and not just an annual event that we students have to host ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have a quick question. Do you have any solutions, you've obviously thought about this a lot, about how those conversations might happen prior to, have you given me thought to what that might look like?
Right. I think that as soon as we have a topic coming up, I think it's going to depend obviously on what the topic is about, but reaching out to the networks we have at schools, because students have really created these already. We have a lot of really strong affinity groups, even clubs. I think the district student council, we can do a lot of outreach too. So if these topics are coming up, we can always put it on the agenda for the district student council, and we can get that out to our schools. We can put out surveys. That's been very effective. We can host town halls. I know Franklin is having a town hall about the curriculum discussion. I think it depends on what exactly we're looking for from students and what we're looking for from the topic. But I think those are some of the ways that are going to really effective.
Thank you.
Is this something that we could, because in the student success committee, maybe even explore options to create structural changes so that we have more of a pipeline from student voices to.
I think that would be essential. Right. Because if you get it in the structure, then it can't be just put aside when it's not being used.
Great. So I would like to
I can
put that on the agenda and
Perfect.
discussion for people who are interested.
You said March 7th at Homsey?
Yeah,
Is there a place to sign up for that?
yeah, it's for high school students, but I think you all have gotten an invite.
Yeah, you can just.
Yeah, and we just go, we don't have to,
Yeah,
there's
but
no sign up.
yeah, I think connect with us so we can make sure scheduling works out, because if we get too many board members, then it becomes a public.
Oh, that's right.
So just to offer a proactive solution, I might ask the DSC to revisit sort of a choice that was made years ago, because it used to be the superintendent and the DSC that met with student leaders.
Super SAC.
The super SAC, and so, you know, I very much wanted to respect students wanting to sort of grow, evolve, kind of build the DSC. Then it left this sort of lack of connective issue. So, if not a standing part of the DSC agenda, at a minimum, you know, I commit my successor, but a chance for DSC leadership to have a regular opportunity to meet with executive leadership.
I think that
Maybe at least a simple avenue to share back and forth.
And what I'll do is, we do have a student engagement specialist that oversees the DSC who works closely with you. So we will make sure that our staff follows up with you to address all these concerns that you've raised.
Thanks a lot.
All right, next we have student comments. Natasha, do you have any students signed up?
We do, and Ms. Powell is going to facilitate that.
Can I say that again?
Roseanne has the people who are going to provide public comment.
Okay.
Hello, directors. I'm just pulling up the list and I'll run it from this end.
Let me give the directions first.
Okay.
First, the board thanks each and every one of you for taking the time to attend the meeting and providing your comments. Public input informs and improves our work, and we look forward to hearing your thoughts and reflections. Our board office may also follow up on board-related issues raised during public testimony. We request that complaints about individual employees be directed to the superintendent before he leaves, as personnel matters.
We're saving for the next time.
If you have any additional material or items you would like to provide to the board or superintendent before he leaves, we ask that you email them to public comments, all one word, at pps.net, public comments at pps.net. Please make sure when you begin your comments that you clearly state your name and spell your last name. You have 3 minutes to speak. You sound after 3 minutes, which means you'll have 30 seconds to wrap up your comments. Now, I heard at one board meeting that Director Green said he had cut you off. He's not trying to be mean or anything, but he might have to, you know, start playing some music or something. So I'm gonna take that. I'm gonna take that up too. So let's go to the comments.
Okay, my name is Jennifer Chavez, Chavez. Student choice is essential for us to succeed. It's what makes or breaks us. Having a freedom to choose our interests allows us to explore what we are passionate about. Thus, we have full creative freedom in classrooms. This is necessary because it opens many doors for students and allows us to explore a variety of topics, empowering us to drive our own education. An article from the New York Times, "School is for making citizens," touches on how schools help students into educated and productive adults. So essentially, a big shared goal among schools nationwide is to set up their students to be successful after high school. Personally, I have been very interested in business and marketing and wish to major in it. Knowing this and forecasting for my junior year English class, I decided to choose social influencing so I can have an opportunity to learn how people and companies influence over an audience. I can use these tools I've learned in this class for the future. So how is setting students up for success to remove classes and essentially forcing students to choose 1 out of 3 options for their English credit, not to mention completely closing off doors for students who thrive in these choice option classrooms, students who may not be successful in cookie-cutter English classes. Dystopian Lit, Women's Lit, Social Influencing, and Med Lit. All of these classes are being replaced with HMH, a Eurocentric literature textbook. HMH consists of texts which are mostly written by white men. The 12th grade curriculum has oppression, narratives, poems which praise white saviorness. This is little to no BIPOC representation in the HMH textbook. Yet it will still be put in the education system. So incoming students, especially our students of color, can read these texts by authors who don't look like them, characters who they can't relate with, texts talking about BIPOC issues from a white man's perspective. Again, no proper representation. Taking these classes away from students and taking their freedom to choose these classes based on their interests and taking them without having any type of student voice not only directly impacts us students, but also impacts our trust. If the district made this decision without thinking about their students, how do we know this will not happen again? How can we put trust into a system when we know that it doesn't support or listen to us? How can we truly feel supported and confident in our classrooms? I am one of many students who feel this way. So to see if other students agreed with this decision, I decided to create a survey. On the very first day of the survey being open, we received over 160 students voicing their thoughts about the removal. Today, we have over 270 responses. All of them said that the removal of English choice options leads them to not feel supported in school. So what will it take for the district to finally hear our voices, to see how much this decision impacts us? Haven't we done enough to show you that this is wrong? That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is Shani Ross.
Okay. My name is Shani Ross, R-O-S-S. Again, I'm Shani Ross. I'm a sophomore at Franklin High School, and I'm here to speak about the removal of English choice classes. I want to start by connecting us to what I'm sure is a very familiar term to you all, interest, or the state of wanting to know or learn about something or someone. Interest is what drives us as students, teachers, administrators, and people as a whole. Psychologists refer to interest as a knowledge emotion because of how emotionally charged it is for us. Choice English classes give us the opportunity to learn in a structure and style that is pushing us to exceed in subjects that we enjoy. It also makes us as a student body unique and have distinctive abilities regarding our passions. A study done by the International Journal of Education in Mathematics, Science, and Technology researched the effects of interest and discipline on learning and learning motivation. It found that interest has a positive effect on learning. To quote the study directly, interest is a powerful dictator and motivator in the learning process. Students are likely to engage in more learning activities when their interests and emotions are positively provoked. Learning with interest would be better than learning without interest. This clearly states what to me is so important. The removal of these classes limits options for courses that are geared towards student interest. A report from the National Institute of Health states that, quote, promoting interest can contribute to a more engaged, motivated learning experience for students. My peers and I could not agree more, and I know my teachers feel the same. In addition, I can say that many students feel as though our voices were not heard nor considered for a decision that has direct implications on our high school experience. The emphasis on using textbooks that contain majority white male authors feels very outdated, as well as spotlighting a system that implies AP and dual credit classes are those of most importance for higher education. Not only are these English textbooks clearly written for a student body that does not reflect our own, they are also found uninteresting. A student should be able to choose whether they want to expand their literacy and writing skills through women's, dystopian, or medical literature, typical English courses, and AP-style English class. As knowledgeable, experienced educators, where do you think a student will excel most? In a course that piques their interest or one that limits their options? Knowing what we know about how important interest is to education, I think the answer is obvious. Thank you.
Jaden? She's not here, okay. And then Jalen? Also not here, okay. Okay, the other two students are not here. So we're done with student comment.
All right. Well, again, thanks again for your comments. I know that sometimes it's get kind of nervous to do it, so thank you for the courage to come in and speak your truth. Please feel free to contact our senior board manager, Roseanne Powell, if you have something specifically you want to follow up on with the board or board office. All right.
Charles,
Yes.
before we, just on this topic, had a lot of, Franklin's in my school board zone. we've had a lot of communications from students on the issue of the high school English classes. It would be helpful for them, for not just for the board to get an answer about what happened in the decision-making process, but have it be something that we could share out. So I don't know if that can happen in the sense of more information, because I think some decisions were made at schools, and just giving students visibility about the rationale behind it would be helpful.
Also, like, I know we have a town hall tomorrow specifically for like school-based administration, but maybe we could set up some sort of like town hall for students to ask questions of like district leadership about it, so they could get a little more clarity about why it's happening.
Okay. All right. We have staff here, and we'll see what we can do to make sure.
And I would
Just
just,
a broader understanding. Yeah.
I would just add, I think it's useful for them to ask questions, but also to hear about pathways that are available that might not have been taken.
Right.
And who may not have taken those pathways, because I think that matters as well.
This is super important, because I think just having transparency about what happened and why decisions are made gives everybody a lot more instead of people guessing about it.
I think we might hear some of that tonight. Food also.
Which is just what you were talking about.
Yeah, because I think like some of the disagreement comes over like when people don't understand why the decisions are being made. And I think like it adds an extra emotional layer to feel like you're being excluded from the conversations, either that isn't actually what's happening or it's not intentional. So just like I think the memos we get and things like that are really important to get out to our communities.
All right. Next, Superintendent, would you like to introduce the next item?
Yes, directors were pleased to share that yesterday, the members of the Service Employees International Union ratified the tentative agreement that we were able to reach this past week. Here tonight to give an overview or share some highlights of that agreement, Genevieve Rowe, our Senior Director of Employee and Labor Relations. Joining her is Chris Walters from SEIU. Thanks for being here this evening.
Sure. I love that you both coordinated.
There's a theme.
Okay, good evening. Good evening, directors, student representative, and Superintendent Barrero. Before you tonight is a 3-year contract between PPS and the Service Employees International Union, otherwise known as SEIU. This contract covers a group of employees, our nutrition service employees, which Laura and Daniel, and then our custodial employees. So these incredibly important individuals serve meals to our students and make their learning environments clean. We are proud of the agreements in the contract because we believe they recognize the work of these employees. Nutrition services employees will earn across the board 38.5% wage increases over the term of the 3-year contract. And custodians will earn 22.2% wage increases over the term of the contract, both groups including step increases each year. And then one component to the custodial agreement is that we're going to offer, which has not been offered before, part-time insurance to custodial employees who work less time. These two groups are incredibly flexible. They've been incredibly resilient in another year of uncertainties, and we believe that the agreement is reflective of their work.
Greetings, everyone. We agree that the contract is a significant improvement over the current contract. It is, we believe, still a stepping stone towards a better future. We appreciate there is part-time health insurance for custodial and nutrition services employees. From what we are hearing, that has already been helpful in terms of recruiting and retention. It was a 20-year fight to get part-time health insurance, and apparently it's paying off just like we said it would. Inclement weather was another thing that we're very happy about for custodians. We're still waiting for the compensation for last year's storm, but now having time and a half for those custodians who make it is going to be a welcome change. And as much as we are happy about a lot of what's in the contract. There's still some areas that we see a need for improvement over time. The nutrition services assistant starting wage is still below $20 an hour and doesn't actually hit the $20 threshold until the third year of the contract. And for as much as Portland Public Schools loves to pat itself on the back about being equitable and just, we don't feel that you can truly be equitable and just if you're not paying all of your lowest paid employees a living wage. And for a lot of them, our employees, I mean, the numbers that Genevieve recited were pretty eye-popping, but at the lower ends, it's not quite as much. And there's a lot of our members that are still gonna have to work second jobs just to keep food on their tables and roofs over their heads. And we would like to see that change when we do this again in a year and a half. We know that budgets can be a challenge. We are very happy to go down to Salem. I will go down there and testify next to whoever you want me to testify next to in front of the legislature, because yeah, we need more money for schools. But you know, the budget is a more document, and there are ways to reallocate funds, I think, to make sure that living wages are paid to all of our lowest paid employees across the board, SEIU, DCU, PFSP, et cetera. We very much appreciate all the support that we got from the community, from all the other unions, from parents, from students, and I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Yeah, I have a question. You said in another year and a half, but this is a 3-year contract, so.
Right. So it took us a year of negotiations to get to this point.
Oh, okay, so it's.
And since we're halfway through the first year of the contract, in about a year and a half, we're gonna be gearing up, putting together another bargaining team to do it all over again.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I was just gonna, are you gonna put a motion on the table, then should we say something? We can put it on. No, I was just gonna, thank both sides. I know there were a lot of external factors that, happened during all the time that you were bargaining. So I really appreciate, SEIU, the members, sticking in there through some really I think one of the more challenging years we've had. So, you know, following on, several years with COVID, where SEIU members, were there sort of on the front lines. So thank you for being in there. And again, there was a lot of things that were very external to, your organization that you kept showing up for our students, so thank you. And then to the district team, thank you for putting together a package that met many of the needs, but not all of them, that we can get to in the future, but really want to thank the district team as well for bringing this tonight.
Well, thank you to you both. I want to say congratulations, and I remember last year, like, speaking with a lot of your members about during the inclement weather closures and post that. So congratulations, and I really hope we can work toward that in the future.
Thank you.
Any other comments? All right. I have a motion and a second to adopt resolution 6841.
So moved.
Additional board comments? Brad, are there any public comments?
No.
The board will now vote on resolution 6841, 2023-26, agreement between Service Employees International Union and School District Number 1J in Multnomah County, Oregon, by voting yes for approving the collective bargaining agreement between SEIU and Portland Public Schools. All in favor, please indicate by saying yes.
Yes.
All opposed indicate by saying no. And I'm gonna say no. And the reason why I'm going to say no is the fact that we didn't get to all employees over $20 an hour. I feel that on both sides, that should have been a priority. I wasn't at the table, so I don't know. But I'm gonna just leave it at that. So resolution 8641 is approved by a vote of 6-1. 5-1. Oh, yeah, I'm not here. All right.
Should call for the resolution.
Okay, early literacy grant application. So I know we heard these earlier. So I'm gonna just ask for a motion and a second to adopt resolution 6836. Oh.
So moved.
Second.
All right, is there any more discussion?
You don't have it yet, so.
All right, Ms. Bradshaw, is there any public comments?
No. I have a couple of questions.
Yes.
I see there that it says this is all, what do they call it? This is the Jumpstart Biennium, 23 to 25. So does that mean that this literacy grant is going to be continued into 26? It sounds like it from what I read. I'm just wondering if that's, do you know yet?
Say that again, are you referring to?
The literacy grant keeps talking about how 23 to 25 is the Jumpstart Biennium, and that when it continues, there'll be different rules. And I'm just wondering, does that mean for sure it's going to keep going?
Well, we can't guarantee what our.
We don't know, but it
elected
sounds
state
like.
leaders will do, but that I think is the intent. Christina, our CAO, that sound right?
Yes. And also, we have to pay 25% of it, isn't that correct? 25% of the grant money comes from us.
There's a match.
It's a matching,
It's a match.
yeah.
Okay.
Of course, as you know, many of the elements of our work already sort of are invested in those areas.
Okay, so we can count what we're already doing into that match? Okay.
Good question, great question.
I had a couple questions.
Maybe you want to come up here, Christina?
Yeah. I don't know if this got passed along. They get passed along to you? The questions? Yeah, my questions. Okay, so. I'm sorry, these are the ones that were sort of left over from last time. There's not a slide number, but the allowable expense category number 3. There's a number of students in the Summer Acceleration Academy listed for the current state, and then the grant extension, there's not a number of students, and do we have a number of students?
We can get you the number of students.
Okay, that'd be great.
Let me jot that down.
I'd just like to know what we're going for the from to, and then in the allowable expense category number 4, the high dosage tutoring. I mean, we had a conversation about it, but I realized I didn't ask my questions because I was still stuck on like we hadn't offered it this year. But who's actually offering that tutor? Is it classroom? The high dosage tutoring, is that classroom teachers?
Yes, it'll be licensed educators.
So are they getting it in the classrooms or after school or?
I think Dana can speak to this. Yeah, so in the current model, there's a couple different ways we're learning, because there's new funding, new resources. But for the remainder of this year, it'll be classroom teachers outside of the school day, as has been the model we've used the past 2 years.
And then I can get this later, I need it before I vote, I'm gonna be supportive, but, just how many students are gonna be receiving it? Out of how many need it? So if we have criteria like X, 3,000 students qualify and we're gonna give it to 1,000, just, understand scope. And then, on allowable expense category number 5, category 5, there's 7 additional schools that we receive interventionists, and have those schools been identified, and what was the criteria?
Got everybody here tonight.
Yeah.
Elizabeth, and her team.
Yeah, we'll use a data process to identify those schools, absolutely. So we'll look at winner, map, growth, absolutely data will tell you.
So currently 30 students get it, or 38 students have them, and then 7 more schools that meet certain criteria will.
And we'll have some more information tonight in the ELA section. There's a whole slide devoted to this, so it expands beyond early literacy, but it speaks to this, some of the things that you're asking. And then whatever additional information you would like, we can definitely.
Those are my questions, just so,
Okay.
if you could afterwards just get them, just again, I'm trying to understand the scope of that.
Okay.
They're in your inbox now.
Yeah,
And I had one more question too. In the budget, you've got early literacy coaches and early literacy specialists. And then it's repeated for each one with a mark saying fringe.
Oh,
What is that?
because these are grant-funded positions, we pay salaries, and then we also pay all of the benefits that come
Oh,
along.
the
And so we
benefits.
have the budget separately for the state, so they can see how that breaks out.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right. Ms. Bradshaw, are there any public comments?
Yeah.
The board will now vote on resolution 6836 for the public schools application for the 23-25 Jumpstart Biennium of the Oregon Department of Education's Early Literacy Success School District Grant. If we vote yes, then we are approving the grant application, which will be submitted to the state. All in favor, please indicate by saying yes.
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 No opposition, no abstentions. Resolution 6836 is approved by a vote of 6-0. Ms. Director, certified on the post of Christie Williams. Voting
Yes.
At the January 23rd work session, we had a discussion on the proposed 2024 legislative agenda for this year's short session, which we are voting on this evening. We have a motion and second to adopt resolution 6844 for the public school legislative agenda.
So moved.
Is there any board discussion? We'll listen to the presentation first.
I don't really have much of
Yeah.
a presentation, but I just want to highlight that we did add a few items since we last discussed it, which I had communicated with you about. We've added some language to give us some flexibility to support any other funding requests that we can support through the session as they emerge. We've also added $41 million in additional funding from the state school fund to cover the gap of paying for our PHE contract over the next 2 years.
And again?
The $41 million for covering the shortfalls of our budget.
I just want to make sure, so we're asking the state for the $41 million to
Yes.
cover the PEP contract that they shortened up at the beginning of the year. Okay, I just want to make
Yes.
sure we.
Yes, that's correct, Chair Hollins.
Okay.
And then we've added a couple of additional bills related to additional funding for healthcare and mental health care for students, lifting the cap on the funds that are distributed to the state school fund for students eligible for special ed services, and then funds for climate resilient school infrastructure. We also added an additional category with some long-term funding priorities, including funding the QEM and asking the governor and legislature to make structural changes to the state school funding formula that would better serve a diverse and urban district like ours, including taking into account differences in cost of living. And then we also.
I just want to make sure, so we're going to be asking them to fund us at the QEM. Okay, I want to make sure that's clear. We're asking them to fund us at the QEM.
Yes, and one thing I do want to caution us is that the legislature is also looking at reforming the QEM. So I do think that we want to be really mindful of the changes that they make to the QEM, so that we are using a benchmark that's appropriate. Really fully investing in quality education. In the event that they do make changes to the QEM that don't meet that benchmark.
I guess it'd be real disappointing if the numbers start coming in lower, you know, all of a sudden. So definitely they raise some red flags.
Yes. So I would say we'll just keep that in mind as we still work towards, you know, overall a better way of funding schools.
And you talked about the cost of living, so is that to differentiate the cost of living in Portland versus the rural districts?
Yes,
So there's
exactly.
a multiplier.
Mm-hmm.
Or it would be
Yeah.
indexed to
There's
cost of
already like a
living.
rural district a rural school district adjustment, but there's not really
It's an adjustment down.
adjustment. No, it's just recognizing that they have students like who are sometimes 50 miles from their school. I mean,
Okay, yeah.
they have greater costs sometimes because of their very small school districts, and that gets recognized. There's more of them.
Right, right.
Um,
195 or so.
So there already is an adjustment in the funding formula for smaller districts, so this has been something for 20 years that we've talked about, because it costs more to do business in the metro area.
Yeah, and it's a scale issue as well, right? Economies of scale in rural areas versus high costs of housing here.
Exactly, and there will be opportunities for us to raise these issues in the work groups and the task forces that the legislature and governor are convening. So I think that's absolutely something we can look at as they look at making changes to the formula and also making sure that they fund any changes to the formula. We don't want, you know, the pie to just get sliced thinner for the districts. So I think we'll be really vigilant and mindful of those conversations.
Any other comments or discussion?
Yes.
Go.
Because I don't want to do this the day after the meeting because it might sort of trigger a public meeting notice, but I'd like to suggest the board send our legislative agenda to all of the Portland this week. I mean, next week, the session's going to be virtually. Send it a copy of our legislative agenda with sort of things that are most important to us highlighted, and send it collectively from all of us. So I want to raise that issue now. And then the other thing is I'm also thinking that as we go into the budget season with our school communities, that we also, it would be good to send that same legislative agenda, again highlighting some of the things that are really important to us, send it out to our PTAs and parent groups in the district so that they can, last meeting, just when we talked about it, there was kind of a flurry of emails and texts from people who were interested in advocating and speaking up, who know what's coming down the pike, that if we don't get resources from the legislature, it just seems like it would be good to do that as soon as possible, just given where the legislative session. So that's something that I want to just raise to the board, because I think the board should be part of that communication to our parent community. And is there anybody who would have an issue with that on board?
No.
At least nobody gonna say it publicly.
If I asked you tomorrow, it would be a public meeting and it'd be much harder to get a direction.
I will volunteer to help draft any communications that go out. And I would also like to propose that the chair, the board, and the superintendent send a letter to legislative leadership asking for the money with the whole delegation also included in that communication. And we can work on drafting a letter talking about the funding challenges ahead for the district.
Absolutely.
We should also include the governor.
Oh, yeah, she can
Yes.
get it too. Oh, yeah, so you can do it too. I was wondering also too, when we talk about, and I know this is not, it's a agenda piece, but, are we setting up things so we can have legislation day down there as well, and, you know, please, for me, let me know, like, when I can testify, to make sure that the right acts is acts. So I wanna make sure it's clear to everyone what we're asking for. So, you know, and also some parents that wants to participate in that, if we can kind of coordinate something like that with parents, with PTA or something like that, that would be great. But I think we should have as much people that were marching and for PAT to get additional funds, should have the same amount of people marching down the state. If we're really serious about, you know, education and funding our school. You know, when we have a strong education system, a lot of the issues that we have now could help eliminate that, you know, with a healthy educational system and it helps us with a healthy economy, you know, coming after that, so. All right.
And didn't you talk about any days for the board to go down? Is that
Yes.
East Vermont?
Yes, thanks, Director. I will be sending out an official invitation tomorrow. We are looking at February 19th as a day of action. Actually had a great meeting with the district student council earlier this evening, and we've got several students lined up to come. So I'll send out some more information tomorrow. We'll invite parents as well and set up meetings with elected officials and be very visible in the Capitol, asking for these really important priorities.
Is that the student day of action on the 19th?
So just to appreciate the board's listed advocacy, you know, items here and the advocacy to come, just to highlight a few areas that there really shouldn't be controversial. Things like aligning community eligibility, so more of our schools and students can access nutrition, more resources for early intervention for preschool age students with identified special needs, raising the cap, which has never been done for special needs generally, that would create relief for all districts to meet services for students with special needs. And I would just ask that the board remain vigilant, because the talk right now around a revised formula for state school fund runs the risk of redistributing resources without actually expanding the pie. That same caution I would urge you to be vigilant about when it comes to talk about statewide salary schedules. That as long as they stay at our level statewide and they're resourced, that would be a good thing. And then lastly, we know our kids need more instructional time, so the sooner the short session identifies summer school funding, that'll enable us to invite students who really need those academic supports this summer. We can start designing and planning programming as well. So thanks for your work on this, Lisa.
Awesome. Do we have any public comment?
We do have some of the public comments. They are in the board room.
We have Isabel Johnson.
Welcome.
I don't think I'm calling her Chair Hollins, and I don't see anybody here.
Oh.
Okay, she must have left.
Okay. So we're gonna go to the vote. All in favor, please indicate by saying yes.
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 Director, student director to the side.
Yes.
All right, so the resolution is approved, vote of 6-0. Next we are voting on a revision to the policy and a new policy. Director Bert Edwards, Chair of the Policy Committee, provided us with background information when the board did a first reading, and I would like to ask her now if there's any other information she would like to share before we move forward with voting.
So one item that we have two second readings this evening, and one of them is the
proposed new policy, the ethics and conflict of interest policy. And as I stated when we had our first reading, we originally in 2017 and 2018, this is an area that we did not have any existing policy, although there is state law. And so we, in 2018, drafted and adopted a nepotism policy. And this is the sort of complementary policy on ethics and conflict of interest. And it really, there already is Oregon Revised Statutes, Chapter 244, that govern, that relate to government ethics for public officials and employees. And currently, district staff and officials follow current ethics rules. We also, and this new policy is recommended to help translate statutory language into user-friendly guidance. I will note that there is, I'm going to ask that we not approve it tonight because there's one small change or addition I'm going to ask to have added to the legislation. Then we will add the slightly revised language, post it, and if there's any, I don't think it's not a really material change, but there is a section that we want to make sure that the statutory language varies slightly from the proposed policy, and we want to align it. So in
What section is that?
It's section 2C, and we would be the current language says membership on the board of directors of a nonprofit corporation that's tax exempt under 501C of the Internal Revenue Code. And what the proposed changes to bring it in alignment with the statute is striking or membership on, and then adding the words or service in a non-remunerative capacity for. So the new sentence would be membership on the board of directors or service in a non-remunerative capacity. I think that essentially in plain English means you're not being paid for a nonprofit corporation that's tax exempt under section 501c3. So this is really conforming language, but because this was brought to my attention today, I think the best, and it hasn't been posted, the best practice would be just to add the language, get it posted up, and we can consider it, unless there's some sort of objection, we could consider it the February 20th meeting. And then it would have been posted. If anybody has any comment on it, they can comment. But we could then adopt the final language, and there hasn't been any public comment on any other sections, but we could adopt it the 20th at our work session where we have a consent agenda. If that works for everybody.
Thank you.
So we would not be voting on that tonight. Do you want me to go ahead with sharing the next second reading? So the next second reading is a change to our public contracting policies. And sorry, I'm just quick. This is a 190 plus page policy that outlines our contracting rules. And there have been changes, legislative changes, but also model rule changes. And essentially, these changes were brought to us by our procurement team to align with the statutory changes and also the model rule changes. And they should increase the effectiveness and efficiency of our procurement contracting policy. We had a first reading. It came out of the policy committee unanimously. We had a first reading. We've had no public comment. The recommendation from staff and the policy committee is to adopt them this evening.
So moved.
Second.
Any other board discussion? All right, so the board will now vote on 6835, amending the district public contracting rules to address statutory and administrative rule changes, and amending special class procurement. By voting yes on this resolution, we are approving the revisions to the contracting rules. All in favor indicate by saying yes.
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 Okay, no opposition. Student Director Silverstein, please indicate your vote.
Yes.
All right. Resolution 6835 is approved by a vote of 6-0, with the student director voting, Silverstein voting yes. All right. Next, we have general public comments. Ms. Bradshaw, do we have any public comments?
We do. Ms. Powell?
Yes, I'd like to call up Devin Ghani.
And I'll just make this thing, since I've already given instructions and guidelines for public comment earlier this evening. Just want to remind PPS staff who are giving, people giving public comment that they may not provide testimony about students that could violate confidentiality protections under FERPA. This includes testimony using information that could identify a student, especially in their school communities, by the use of direct or indirect linkage such as school, grade, special education, or other status. Please make sure when you begin your comments that you clearly state your name and spell your last name. Once again, you have 3 minutes to speak. You will hear a sound after 3 minutes, or my voice, which means you'll have 30 seconds to wrap up your comments. We're ready. There.
Just started my own timer too. Good evening. My name is Devin Ghani, DEVONGHANI. I work at the Pioneer Special School Program as a therapeutic intervention coach for special ed students. I first came to this board about 11 months ago with safety concerns for both the working conditions and learning conditions at the Pioneer program. Those same safety concerns are continuing today. Unsafe work environment, physically unsafe as far as sharp edges, unclean spaces. We have rugs that were soaked during the freeze with water. You can see the discoloration on them. We also have lots of new staff, wonderful staff who need training. It's another safety concern. So far, when I've come to you about my safety concerns, you have not responded to me in any way. No questions asked, no comments. I invited a member of the board to come to our school. That hasn't happened. So I'm going to give an example about safety that I hope the board can understand a little bit better. I'm aware that this district hired Black Wolf Protection Group during September of 2023, a private security firm. The agents for that firm were paid $84 an hour. The expectation that they were well trained to keep you safe, I'm sure that's why you hired them. Their Instagram and their website talk about preparation being key to keeping people safe. So I believe you probably hired them with the expectation that they could keep you safe. So let's imagine instead you are a parent of a special ed student who has to make the difficult decision to remove their student from their neighborhood school and send them to another school, perhaps an hour bus ride away at Pioneer. Your student has disabilities. They have behavior needs that are severe. You're hoping that bringing your student into this environment will keep them safe. But then you find out that the staff aren't trained before they are hitting the floor. And when I say not trained, they're not even explained exactly what kind of behaviors they should be expecting to see on their first day of work. They're thrown in the room within maybe 10 or 15 minutes of the bell ringing, correct? So no time for the teacher to prepare them. It's not the teacher's job. They shouldn't be training them. No time for coaches like me to come in and explain, hey, this is what's going to happen today. Sometimes I don't even know if there's a new staff until we're several hours into the day. People want to do their jobs well at Pioneer. We have been asking for training. We've been asking for workshopping, debriefing, which is required by state law and district policy, often does not happen. The only way we can keep kids safe is if you prepare us to keep kids safe. Train us to do our jobs, take our safety concerns seriously. Maybe you can take a look and see that we haven't had any safety committee meetings at all this year. My administrator admitted that to me the other day.
30 seconds.
Yep, I'm aware. This is a problem. It's a safety problem. If you're ignoring it intentionally, you're setting students up for failure. You're setting staff up for failure. And eventually someone's gonna get hurt really badly. So far, there have been many, many, many injuries, really bad traumatic injuries that students witness happening to staff and students witness happening to each other. Kids are getting hurt too.
Thank you. Thank you.
Pay attention.
Next, we have Brian Dykeman.
Hello, Brian Degman, D-Y-K-M-A-N, teacher at Franklin High School. I come before you this evening alongside my colleagues, Franklin students, parents, and community members to bring to your attention some troubling changes to the courses we offer at Franklin High School. For over 20 years, Franklin has engaged students in the study of language arts by offering them a variety of thematic choices when signing up for their English class in 11th and 12th grade. However, PPS management has enacted a policy that eliminates many of these choice options from our catalog. Students are just now learning that they cannot take women's literature and social issues, dystopian literature, medical literacy and composition, or social influencing and revolutionary voices. Why? We have not been given a reason as to why our choice English classes are no longer considered to be aligned with the district curriculum. When we ask district leaders and our own building administration what this means and how we can come into alignment, we are told time and again, there is nothing we can do. They tell us it is the school board's policy that dictates we can only teach advanced placement, dual credit, or the recent HMH textbook adoption. We turn in syllabi every year that have been approved by the district that document grade level standards and content in these courses. The idea that our choice classes somehow are not rigorous or standards-based is contradictory to what students are saying about how the courses have prepared them for college. For example, Ada Holstrom, currently a freshman at Bennington College, told us, "I believe that women's literature and social issues sets me up for success in college. This class showed me how to look at literature through various lenses, including a feminist lens, which I currently practice in my college academics." Our choice classes are among the most racially representative classes we offer. Data provided by our vice principal attached to this testimony captures that our choice classes are more likely to be racially representative of our diverse student body when compared to our advanced placement and dual credit offerings. What is perhaps most upsetting is that this decision was made without parent, student, and community input. When Franklin English teachers attempted to reach out to parents about this issue, we were given an administrative directive to not use Synergy to update families on the courses we are no longer offering at Franklin High School. This makes it feel like district leadership actively does not want families informed about these changes. We urge the school board to step in and stop school leaders from eliminating these choice classes. We ask you humbly, what can we do to show you these courses are aligned with our curriculum adoption? How can we keep courses like women's literature not as electives or dual credit courses, but as core language arts courses? We urge you to come visit our classrooms and come meet with us. We have more data to share and much more to say on the nuances of this decision. We'd like to give the last word about our choice classes to a former student, Brennan McConnell Greiner, currently a senior at UCLA. I would put women's literature on par with my AP courses. I feel very lucky to have taken the course.
Thank you.
Thank
Time's up.
you. And we look forward, I'm sorry that we cut off that student voice, but we look forward to working with you to talk about
Thank
saving
you.
our choice class in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Beauty Salam.
BEUTEE, be yourself to everyone everywhere. Peace, blessings, love, light, and enlightenment, family. I'm here to send a clarion call to the community, a call to all parents, guardians, and every other responsible adult who's both deeply and personally invested in the education, cultivation, and elevation of the children we are helping to raise around the Portland Public School system. I also send a call to every educator, mentor, and loving adult who have tirelessly dedicated their time, energy towards actively and intentionally breathing life into our children as they travel along their individual journeys of growth and development. First, I simply want to say thank you. What I need you to know is that I'm right here in the struggle with you, so I know that you know and fully understand the depth of the well of gratitude that I have for each and every one of you. And for those who came before you and inspired you and supported you to do all that you do, even when it feels like the hardest thing. But you continue to push through because you know that it will be, as it has been, the most rewarding thing that you will ever have the honor to do. 1844, Peter Hardman Burdert's Lash Law is included in the first anti-black law limiting slavery and excluding black settlers. 1847, Ralph Wilcox, first teacher and doctor in Portland. 1849, and shall not be lawful for any Negro or mulatto to enter or reside in Oregon. 1851, Portland Public Schools was first established. The early public schools were met with some criticism. An editorial in the Oregonian, July 3rd, 1852, stated that the Common School Council was self-called, self-elected, that voted $1,000 in addition to be paid of our citizens for pedagogying some dozen or two children. 1857, the third anti-black state law prohibits blacks from being in the state, owning property, or making contracts. This is probably not news to many of us, but please know that I have filled notebooks of research and with information in preparation for these few minutes before you today. And yes, the powers that we have allowed to be continue to now pacify us with the illusion of inclusion, putting black names on buildings. We finally have people of color on the school board, and your votes helped seat our current school board members. But who handpicked and groomed the folks who got on the ballot? Better yet, who funded their campaigns? So to who have they truly pledged allegiance, and to whom do they feel they owe? And to whom have they shown loyalty? Who is it that they are bound to serve? You and I? As the community, ask the community of multiple DLI students who were silenced last month. Ask the Tubman community of families. Ask the community members who just caused this meeting to be relocated. Let's start anew, protecting the liberties of others as well as our own, educating ourselves to be our very best, actively listening to others, to understand, not to judge, choosing to give grace, extending ourselves to others with no ulterior motives. So again, I send this call to all of us who want peace to rise above PPS. And so, my fellow Benson Tech brother, Gary Hollins, my sister Michelle, I honor your words you so eloquently shared at the beginning of this meeting. I invite you and your entire consortium to continue to move over to the right side of neither her story nor history, but for us to be completely honest about where we are at this moment in time. We now must, as we've continued to unearth some ugly truths, I'm just asking that we as a community write a new narrative, our story, for all of our babies to walk, forge mutual benefit, and rooted in common unity. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And lastly, Robert Schultz. I think that's it.
That's it?
Yes, that's it. He's not here.
All right.
That must meeting starts.
So, if you indulge us a little bit, I would love to move a thing around. I wonder if we can talk about the levy referral discussion first, and then go to the implementation of the language in our curriculum. Is that okay? All right. So next we'll discuss the referral to the local option levy to continue fund teachers and classroom supports. After tonight's preview, we will vote to formally refer it to the February 20th meeting. Superintendent Guerrero, would you like to introduce this topic?
Yeah, we're gonna have Lisa back up here, in the audience. Morning, everyone. Looks like, this is a topic I know we've had some discussion about.
Oh, wait, no. Oh, you did all that? Yes. Thank you. Okay, Lisa Merrick, I'm the Senior Manager of Government Relations. I'm here to discuss the local option levy renewal. I'm joined by
Young Lee, Interim Deputy Superintendent of Business and Operations in a supporting role.
You go to the second slide. So just for some general background information about our local option levy. PPS has had a local option levy since May of 2000. This was in the wake of the Measures 5 and 50 property tax reforms, and a lot of school districts were grappling with the sudden loss of revenue. The levy was first approved at a 60% rate at 75 cents per $1,000 of assessed property value, which has since grown a lot over the years. In November 2019, which is our most recent local option levy renewal, it was renewed by 77% of the district's voters at our current rate of $1.99 per 1,000 assessed property value. Similar to a lot of districts across the state, we know that we have a state funding challenge, and so a lot of local school districts look to these local option levies to supplement those dollars. In our case, we've been able to fund over 800 teaching positions over the last 5 years. In order to continue the levy and sustain this level of funding for the next 5 years, we are recommending that the board refer the renewal to district voters for approval, and we recommend that the board do so at the May 21st, 2024 primary election. And this is in alignment with what the levy committee proposed last year. Go to the next slide. As you can see, these two charts show the fiscal impact that the local option levy has had for the district. You'll notice on the left side, that's the revenue we've received over the last 5 years of the local option levy cycle. You will notice a dip in revenue in the 2023 to 2024 school year. There was a lot of reporting earlier this fall about the the plummeting value of commercial real estate in downtown Portland. That the downtown property accounts for about 15% of Multnomah County's property. So that dip has really impacted our tax base. But when we're looking at the projections for the next 5 years, we're hopeful that the city is moving in a more positive direction, albeit slowly. So we are projecting out some slight increases over the next 5 years.
I thought this makes sure I'm understanding correctly. This is a Multnomah County tax that is used to help offset the lack of funding that we're getting from the state. Okay. So
Yeah.
It's actually just PPS.
Just PPS.
PPS,
Yes, but it,
PPS boundaries. Okay,
but we collect a lot from the
gotcha.
county, including part of the downtown area.
There are also small portions of Washington County and Clackamas County that we also collect the same levy on, but the great majority is from
Very small areas. I just want to comment on what you just said, Lisa. It grows very slowly, and we're certainly not going to do a property tax deep dive here, but it's interesting to know that even with projections of overall property, values going up because of compression, because of Measure 5, because of limitations, that those increases are not keeping up with wages, which means that the number of teachers keeping that current rate, the number of teachers funded by it will continue to drop over time. So that's sort of a reality of having a local option levy. And again, there's lots of, potential reforms we could do that would help with that, but it's a good thing to know for voters.
And to your point, I think we've also projected that, because of the PAT contract and higher expenses for paying for our teachers, we're now gonna likely fund about 750 teachers, even if we renew at the same rate.
And may I just add one point of information on the figures on the right-hand side, and actually the last figure on the left-hand side is also a projection. So these are all forecasts, and we are in the process of trying to get the latest information especially from the county economist, county, and there's a chance that we may have reason to shift some of these projections between now and your vote on the 20th. So we're hoping to have a meeting with the county economist actually this week. Yeah. So there's a chance that some of these projections will be shifted.
And to be clear, the projections don't matter. The tax rate's what matters. So the projections are important for, just transparency, but it collects what it collects. Yeah.
I mean, I think you answered my question partially about the projections that they're coming from the Multnomah County. Is that the assumptions going into the projections come solely from there? Or are you also looking at real estate data or?
Well, the projections that are underlying these projections, I should say, those are based on our sort of internal estimates of the increases from year to year. So on the right-hand column, each of those each year is 1.13% higher than the prior year.
Okay.
So we hope that will prove to be conservative and the actual numbers will come in higher, but because of this unusual dip, it usually there's a 3% or so increase each year in the historical trends. And so what was an unwelcome break in that pattern was this year that we're in. So an actual, not even keeping flat, but actual decrease. So that was, as Lisa said, a result of this marked depression in assessed values in the commercial property sector. So we feel like we need to get more expert opinions as much as we can from the county to boost our understanding of what they're projecting. So
So are the numbers on the left, Ben, are those based on historical data? The
The-
1.1% a year, and that's considered kind of a conservative,
the first three
but
numbers.
those numbers could be adjusted once we know more?
Right, the first three numbers on the left-hand side, those are actuals. So those are official.
I'm sorry, I got my left and right.
Oh, okay.
I have left-right dyslexia. I meant on the right
On the
side.
right-hand side.
Those are projected
Those are
out
projections.
using historical trend line.
Right.
And those could be adjusted once you know more.
Right, and certainly they'll be adjusted, as Director Scott said, once the actuals come in each year, but we have to, for the various documents that you'll vote on and that will be filed with the elections departments, showing estimates of revenue collected and the number of teaching positions that we estimate that the levy will support each year. We have to make projections, and they're not binding. There's not a penalty if the actual amounts vary from what was projected, but we do want to be as well informed as we can. So that's.
Yeah, and my only caution, the estimates are wrong.
Yeah.
They will always be wrong.
Okay.
So, and I think, I just want to be clear, and that has nothing to do with your skills in forecasting. Property tax forecasts are based on individual houses and whether your assessed value, how close it is to your RMV, property tax levies get compressed first. There's no economist in the world who can project even 1 or 2 years out, but certainly not 5 with any level of precision. So
And even if
these
they don't agree. if
these
you
are
get two
excellent
economists
estimates that will be wrong, which is why the most important thing is the rate, which is
The rate.
199. We will collect what we collect. And
Okay.
even if we saw my point was, even if we saw great property tax, property value growth, the district may not benefit from that because of the way that local option levies are compressed first, and because they're outside of the Measure 5 caps. And so, again, that's even not, that we're not even talking about the state cap now, we're talking about Measure 5 issues that could also be reformed if the state wanted to. And, you could take local option levies out of the Measure 5 caps, it would require a vote, but, that would be a tremendous, positive change, but I'm sidetracking. Yeah. these are really
So then
helpful.
will we be conservative in terms of the numbers of teachers that, we, in the last levy, I think we said we would fund 850 to 900 teachers. And so with these changes then, are we looking at funding fewer teachers by the end of 2030? How do we come up with that number?
So there's a little note at below each table, and the 2019 to 2024 levy has on average funded 800 teaching positions, and the number on the right-hand side looking forward says 750. And that's one of the numbers that we're gonna, kick the tires on too. But basically, the reason for that being lower is that the salaries and benefits for each teacher are increasing more quickly than this revenue source.
Yes.
And so,
Makes perfect sense.
so it'll have to be, unless these projections end up being really low and we see, really rapid growth, rather than kind of a very modest growth in the levy collected. That's not really what we expect. We expect it to be sort of slow.
Very, yeah.
Slower than the increase in competition.
Thank you.
Other questions?
You're not done with this.
Yeah, we have a few more slides, if there's any other questions on the fiscal projections? Okay, we can go to the next slide. And for additional background information, we also have a statutory limit imposed by the state on how much school districts can revenue. There's 3 tests, and it's the least of those following options, which is, as Andrew mentioned, the Measure 5 limit on each property, 25% of the total received by the district from the state school fund formula, or $2,000 per district extended weighted average daily membership increase each fiscal year of 3%. And then any amount collected above that limit is then deducted from the state school fund grant. And the limit that is projected for next fiscal year is $123 million. And so at this moment in time, with the projections we have, we're not expected to meet that limit if we do refer the levy referral at the same $1.99 per thousand of assessed property value rate. So we're not expected to meet that limit in the life cycle of this levy. However, if we do increase the local option rate, we would be likely to meet that limit in that 5-year period. And so we would require state action to either increase that limit or remove the cap, or go in some other different directions where we could still so we want to make sure we're monitoring that over the next 5 years. But if we do refer this at the rate that we currently have, we will not hit that limit in the next 5 years. We can go to the next slide. The district was able to do a survey of likely May voters. And as you'll see from the chart, what the chart shows is that voter support for each levy options at 3 points in the survey. You can see the percentage of individuals that support the renewal, the 25-cent increase, and the 50-cent increase. As you can see, the renewal does have the most support. And if you have any questions about the different questions that were imposed on the survey, there were different information provided for each ask, but we are it's very clear that the renewal at the current rate has received the most support from likely new voters. And just some key dates and deadlines we want to keep in mind as we move through this. March 1st is when we do have to provide a notice of ballot title due to the Multnomah County Elections Office. March 21st is when we have our measure filing deadline. May 7th is when we would have a Tax Supervising and Conservation Commission, the TSCC public hearing. And then May 21st, of course, is the primary election, and that would be the date that this referral would be on the ballot for our voters. In order to follow those deadlines, we propose this evening's board meeting and discussion about the levy referral, followed by a February 20th board vote on the referral, that we can also provide notice to the TSCC about our plans to refer this to the ballot. And then we'll move forward with providing all the materials to the Multnomah County Elections Office. Any questions about any of those dates? Okay, we can go to the last slide. Given all of that information, staff is recommending that the board of directors refer the local option levy to voters to be considered in the May 2024 primary election and maintain our current rate of $1.99 per thousand of assessed property value. Again, this aligns with the levy committee's recommendation. We also proposed some additional action steps, which I'm happy that the board is already working on. We did just unanimously approve the legislative agenda, which includes asking the state for $41 million to bridge the shortfalls in our upcoming budgets. And I think looking even past this session, we can ask for additional funding to meet the quality education model, participate in some of those other opportunities that I highlighted that the governor and legislature are convening, including talking about what kind of adjustments we can make to the state school fund formula, and then of course, the legislation to remove or lower the cap on our local option. So we do feel that this is the best path forward where we will get the most support from our voters and maintain this the funding that we have, and also look to opportunities where we can increase funding.
Right, any other questions?
Just to summarize, the referral of the local option renewal, which will not raise the rate, is one measure that we can take over the next several years, including several of the additional ones that the legislature outlined here as part of the way to build back funding, whether it's through increasing the state school fund, changing the state funding formula, and then our voters, as they usually have, supporting us with local options. But it's not, we pass a local option renewal and that solves everything.
Yeah. Time for comments?
Yeah.
Can I
Go for it.
Actually, that was a
Keep going.
pause.
Keep going.
So the other thing is, I just want to clarify, is that just because we decide to go for renewal now, does not mean that if we have are successful legislatively of changing the rules around the local option, it doesn't mean we couldn't go out in the future to with a new ask to provide additional supports. So it would basically, we're locking in the space. So the other thing I guess I want to just add to the slide that had sort of the board's action, and it may have seemed like it stopped at the 20th of February. But I guess this is just my pitch to my fellow board members that really once the district files the paperwork with the elections office for the renewal, then it's really our job to lead and be the advocates for passage of the measure, and just as background ways in which you all will be expected and hope you will enthusiastically raise your hand to support, helping secure endorsements, raising money, speaking to school and community groups. We are going to be engaging Jeremy Wright, who's ran the 2019 local option levy and also the 2020 PPS bond measure to be the lead consultant. And I want to just share appreciation for the fund for PPS for an early significant commitment to the campaign. But we are going to need a all hands on deck for the board to pass this in its, I think, 15 weeks until election day. So be ready for the ask for your help, because once it goes to the elections office, it is sort of out of the district's hands to be the advocates, and it's our job to get it over the finish line with our community.
Is there time to lower the voting age between now and then, so Frank, our students can help out? That is a reform I would love to see in the long term. I think this is an important conversation tonight. Thank you. And there's some new information which I think is really important. I just want to put it into a little bit of context. We, as Director Medward said, this levy it's essential to the district, and the continuation of the levy is essential to the district. One of the things that came up over the last more than a year was this question of if the state is not going to adequately fund education, do we want to do something at the level? And we were actually thinking about this, and we actually in the last legislative session put forward a proposal that would have either lifted the cap or allowed us to keep more of the revenue, and the state legislature did not pass it. It did get a hearing, which was nice, but obviously not nice enough. And then after that legislative session, we obviously had the teacher strike, and as part of that, we heard from our community a very strong desire to support the school district with additional funding. Obviously, the bulk of that needs to come from the state, but there was conversation about what can we do locally. And the reality is because the legislature did not increase that cap, there's not a whole lot we can do. Looks like we're going to now, because of adjusted property tax values, we're going to stay under the cap. with this renewal. But as you mentioned in the slide deck, if we were to increase it, we would be running either dangerously close to or above that cap. And so I think that's a key fact that I really want to just stress for the community, that there's that reality that the state limits what we can keep. The other really important piece is what we heard from the public. And that's something I've said all along, that I am very interested in potentially pursuing an increase in this levy. But I only want to pursue an increase in the levy if our local voters are going to support it. And there's a little bit of a chicken and egg there in terms of how do we build that support? Do you go out for a campaign? Do you build trust? And how do you build that? But it's not there right now. And the reality is that I think given those poll numbers, we would almost certainly lose. And that would be very, very bad for the district. We need to keep this existing levy and at the existing rate in order to avoid catastrophic cuts. So all of that has led me to support the staff recommendation to move forward at the existing levy renewal. And push really hard for it. As Director Medwood said, it is a different environment than it has been. And we know that our community supports our schools. We know they support our teachers. That's what this money goes for. So I'm confident, but it's still going to take a campaign. It's still going to get the word out. It's also an opportunity to build on some of the conversations from this last fall and talk about, okay, this is, you actually said it better than I can, Director Medwood. It's a way to, it's one piece of getting this renewal, doing what we're doing at the legislative session, and then we can come back and revisit this in the future. So I can imagine some of our community might be a little frustrated to say, wait a minute, why aren't we going out for an increase? Why aren't we using this to lower class size? Why aren't we doing these things? And it's laid out some of the risks of that, but what can we do to build support over the next year or 2 years so that we may be able to come back and have a different conversation at that. Anyway, I support the staff recommendation. Thanks for bringing it forward.
Any other more comments? All right, thank you.
Thank
We'll be voting on it at the February 20th meeting. Next, we will have an update on implementation of the language arts curriculum. Superintendent Guerrero, would you please introduce this item?
Well, we at staff very much appreciate the board reserving time as a priority to hear about how our adopted curriculum implementation is going. So we did recently one content area tonight. We have a whole cast of folks. I'll let them each introduce themselves as they speak. Tonight we're going to talk about English language arts. So we have our initial speakers come up. That would be great. And if you could just introduce yourself and role for our viewing audience, so they know who you are.
Absolutely. You all have this in your package, giving you a version of these. I mean, there's a whole. Wow. Nice. Spread out.
I'm glad I didn't wear white.
Everybody's just. We need to wait till they get back. Extra chair here. Wow, this is a party. I'll only need to take up the space because I need to read. Wait. See what you're going to
Lost the chair.
Wait, right?
Here's a much better here.
Yeah.
Superintendent Guerrero, do
Yeah.
you want to go ahead and kick off the?
We can if we want.
It seems like he seemed to
All right,
say, go ahead.
CAO Howard, you want to kick us off?
Sure. Good evening, board directors and student representative. My name is Christina Howard and I'm the interim chief academic officer. I'm pleased to share the facilitation tonight with several others. So each person will introduce themselves when it's their turn to speak. So tonight we are here to share about our K-12 English Language Arts, which we're also referring to as ELA. Curriculum implementation. So we are currently in year 2 of our K-12 ELA curriculum adoption, which supports Tier 1 and Tier 2 instruction for all students. Prior to our first year of implementation during the 22-23 school year, it has been several years since an ELA curriculum was adopted. This is a shift in pedagogy and instructional approaches to ELA instruction. And as a reminder, during our initial implementation years, we want to see teachers using the adopted materials and working with their colleagues in professional learning community to understand the new approaches to teaching and learning. In the classroom, we are looking for materials in student and teachers' hands and teacher pacing. As we move to deeper levels of implementation in later years, we are looking at the integrity of implementation. As teachers become more and more familiar with the curriculum and engage in more learning together, the integrity of implementation should increase. Because we are in 1.5 years into the adoption, the data we will share tonight really focuses on the earlier stages of curriculum implementation, similar to the math presentation we gave about a month ago, and the usage of the curriculum. We also want you to know that we share your same sense of urgency, and that when we are doing something new, it takes time and opportunities to learn. I would also like to remind us of our why and our roadmap to educational equity. Within the roadmap, we are focused on high-quality instructional materials for tonight. You can see our agenda on the left, and we will close out tonight with any questions you may have.
So we're going to start off with K-5. I'm Emily Glasgow. I'm the Senior Director for PK-5 Academics in our Office of Teaching and Learning. As our team shared on January 23rd, the 2022-23 school year was the first year in which our K-5 Tier 1 or core ELA curriculum was fully aligned with the science of reading research. The components of this curriculum are listed on this slide. The first 3 explicitly help our youngest students learn to read. I saw terrific Heggerty and Foundations instruction at Rosa Parks this morning. I saw kindergarten students practicing reading with their eyes closed by blending together sounds like m, is ma, or take off the is at. And I saw second grade students using letter tiles to tap out and practice spelling tricky words like clothes and grades. Every day in our K-3 classroom, students spend 120 minutes learning and practicing these isolated reading skills and then applying them to books. In both our English and our DLI classrooms, we integrate English language development supports into our core ELA blocks. In our first year of implementation, which was last school year, our learning walks revealed that 84% of classrooms were using our adopted ELA core resources. From spring 2022 to spring 2023, our aggregate OSAS scores in ELA stayed steady at 57% proficient. I want to remind the board that these scores represent only end-of-year performance in grades 3, 4, and 5. Our kindergarten through second grade students do not take OSAS. As you can see on this slide, most racial subgroups also remained at steady levels of performance with a small increase for Latino students and a decrease for Native students. We continue to see a significant racial gap in our aggregate scores, and this is the need we're focused on addressing with our ongoing and new investments in early literacy. And thank you for the approval this evening. Excited to get going. I'm going to pass to Joanna for 6-8.
All right, thank you, Emily. I'm Joanna Tobin, Senior Director for Middle Grades for Academics and Redesign. And it's a pleasure to share with you tonight about 6-8. Though our adoption is really 6-12, so you'll also be hearing from Philippe. Our adoption is the Houghton Mifflin Harcourt or HMH intro literature. We are in our second year of implementation. This curriculum uses text that connects students' lives, builds confidence, and really builds mastery of the standards in support of the college and career readiness standards. To talk a little bit about the college and career readiness standards within the Common Core State Standards, this includes 3 key pieces: complexity, evidence, and knowledge. So complexity refers to practice regularly with complex texts and academic language. Evidence is grounded in reading, writing, and speaking in the evidence of the text, both literary and informational. And then knowledge builds knowledge through content-rich nonfiction. So in order to reach that full demand of a standard, it really is that full package of those 3 areas. And so when we talk about implementation so far, our principals report based off of some feedback this winter that approximately 69% of comprehensive middle schools are regularly using the HMH curriculum, and at KH, 63%. The middle grades team has been engaging in implementation walks in both our K-8s and middle grades. We're calling this our phase 1. We're really getting in there, seeing what's happening to better understand current implementation. Phase 2, we're really looking forward to, which is on-site additional professional learning. We have a teacher survey ready to launch this week that will help tease out some of those needed pieces from teachers as we continue to implement. And as you can see from our data on the right, our effort in this professional learning on-site is really addressing the urgent need. We share with you the urgency around this data, and the data that's reflected on the right, really moving into that site level professional development so that we can really look specifically at student data with teams building upon the PLC work. And with that, I will pass to Philippe for 912.
Thank you for the opportunity. Philippe Piestich, Senior Director for High School Academics. You heard a little bit about the HMH curriculum. I'll share a little bit more. At the high school level, the curriculum includes a range of grade level, diverse, and teacher-selected texts. For example, the very first unit of the 9th grade curriculum includes texts from Langston Hughes, Samira Ahmed, and Angela. In 10th grade, students are exposed to the writing of Dr. King, Malcolm X, Colson Whitehead, and Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. The curriculum includes Writable, which is a digital platform that enables students to receive timely and focused feedback. While the curriculum provides teachers with a common and comprehensive foundation of relevant resources, it also has flexibility for teachers to refine and adjust as appropriate to meet student needs. It's worth noting that this curriculum is used by more than 1,500 school districts across the country, including over 200 school districts that are as big or bigger, as diverse, if not more diverse, than PPS. At this point, 40% of our high school principals report consistent use of the implementation of the HMH curriculum, and 30% indicate that there's consistent use of the assessments. Our student course passage rates for English language arts are relatively high, though we do see that we have racial achievement gaps that need to be addressed. Happy to report that 7,400 students, high school students, are enrolled in upper level English courses, and that 2,000 of our students are currently taking dual credit college courses, high school dual credit courses. This number is increasing across all racial groups, and student access and success in college level coursework, as you probably know, has been a part of our high school success plan for several years. We're really pleased to see more of our students experiencing success at this level.
Yeah, so I'm John Franklin, Chief of Schools. Also a member of the OSP team. We're up at the dais with us. Chris Frazier, Senior Director of Schools, former principal at Franklin, and of course Margaret Calvert, Assistant Superintendent. So I'm just gonna real quickly talk a little bit, and I talked about this during the last presentation about math. And of course, we'd love to engage with dialogue and questions. So the big piece in terms of monitoring and following up with this is, number one, getting into classrooms. Right? There's a concerted effort distinctly to make sure we are in classrooms, not only from the senior director, but more so from a principal perspective. Instructional rounds, it happens every week. And so that is a big piece, and that's in both OSP and TL. In instructional rounds, there's a promo practice generally centering around grade level standards of instruction, is the curriculum being implemented, and of course, the tier 1 piece, which we know as the instructional framework, which are instructional priorities. Learning walks, there was learning walks today, and that is really geared specifically towards curriculum implementation. And so that happens pretty consistently, not as consistent in instructional rounds, but pretty consistent there. Senior directors during their one-on-ones, weekly at most, it would be bi-monthly. They observe classrooms with principals. There's a specific template that they use, noting usage of the curriculum, and really instructional priorities, like I said, around instructional framework is important as well. I mentioned this last time, and looking forward to having this come to fruition. I think it's a standard of expectation in terms of every teacher has at least 3 to 5 informal observations with feedback given. Using a consistent informal observation tool centered upon our evaluation rubric, Charlotte Danielson, and in the instructional framework. We are working distinctly with ILTs. That was a big kickoff for us this year in August, instructional leadership teams, which help really guide the PD for buildings. And that's comprised of various members of the school, obviously teachers, principals, instructional coach, which is new this year. Quarterly reviews happen. Chris can probably talk to you if need be if you have questions. He's been, senior directors are charged with having quarterly reviews with ILT teams to talk specifically about progress on instructional priorities. And then, of course, then PLCs is another big piece, which we feel is a distinct lever in terms of increasing student achievement. And so getting consistent, not implementation, but then data from those PLCs. The PLCs is not getting together to talk about field trips, it's getting together distinctly about student data, student work, what does that look like? And then they're very specific, and I mentioned this as well, the use of the SCIP consistently throughout the year as the foundation or roadmap for schools is distinctly important. It's not something that just sits on the shelf, but the skip showcases that we have throughout the year provide opportunities for principals to distinctly talk about progress publicly on their goals and the strategies that they're using. Then, of course, feedback is given on whether those strategies are working, what to do better in those specific cases. And I would say this distinctly, and you're seeing some of the data. I think the first piece to school improvement, right, is confronting the real facts. They're pieces that you've seen, in terms of curriculumation at the high school level that we are working through, that we're struggling with. I think you've seen some of the comments that we've been getting. So that's a microcosm of some of the push. It was different in math. ELA, and I think Director Remembrance talked about that, is when you work so long without a curriculum and you push something forward, people are invested in what they've been doing. So we're trying to build sustainable practice, right? And they have to believe in this and this is their life work and building capacity. And as Christine said, it takes time. So we're not nowhere near obviously where we want to get to, but we're very confident we will get there with system instruction.
Good evening, Jay Buno, Chief of Student Support Services. It's a pleasure to be here representing our NPSS and our student support team. I'm accompanied by my colleague, Assistant Director Elizabeth Martin, who leads our academic intervention and dyslexia work across the district in collaboration with our OTO and OSP colleagues and each of our building leaders. Throughout these curriculum presentations, questions have been posed of what happens when students are not learning or what happens when students are not at grade level. Prior to this presentation, we provided you some information about that, and we'll quickly summarize some of that here also for you. First and foremost, I want to share with you that we will not close the student learning gaps only through intervention. That only happens when the student is provided high-quality core instruction with the appropriate scaffolds, with intervention occurring in addition to the core instruction. If only intervention is provided or only core instruction is provided, the gap will either persist or the gap will grow. Next, I want to take a moment to speak a little bit about the pyramid that you see on the slide. When I talk about tier 1 or core instruction, we are saying grade level standard aligned instruction and curriculum access for all students in English language arts. This is a foundational principle of NCSS that all students receive core instruction. Tier 2, or the middle part, is what is done using the core materials when students need more time within the core resources, more focus on the standard and smaller group instruction, or more instruction delivered by the classroom teacher. And finally, tier 3 is the smallest part of the pyramid. It's small group or even at times one-to-one instruction delivered by the classroom teacher or an academic interventionist to address leveling academic skills. Each step of this process is driven by academic performance data, starting with curricular resources and then embedded assessments, diagnostic assessments, and then moving into our map growth assessments, and finally our summative OSAS assessments. As a system, we provide decision-making points for our teams as guidance on tiers based on our map assessment data. When a student scores above the 40th percentile, the student's growth is occurring at expected rates within core classroom instruction. When the student scores between 21st and 39th percentiles, and they require additional core support with tier 2. And finally, when the student scores below the 20th percentile, we recommend small group tier 3 instruction, suggesting that they have lagging skills and require academic intervention in addition to core instruction. So Elizabeth is going to speak a little more in detail about tier 3 process, but the concept that I want to leave you with, and we'll continue to reinforce this, is the stronger the core tier 1 instruction is and our immediate response to tier 2 needs, the fewer students that are required tier 3 intervention. We have substantial urgency in addressing the learning needs of our students right now. And I've shared data with you showing we're having success doing that right now. And at the same time, we're not going to intervene our way out of this issue without also addressing high quality evidence-based materials and the capacity of our student-facing practitioners to address the student learning needs. And so with that, I'm going to invite Elizabeth to share what tier 3 looks like in more detail.
Good evening, directors. I'll first speak to the right-hand table here. Tier 3 intervention is intensive. It's delivered in a small group, and it's dedicated learning to student needs. It's guided by diagnostic assessment that Chief is going to talk about that pinpoints the exact lagging skill in exactly teaching. We use evidence-based curriculum materials for intervention that are aligned to our tier 1 resources, and we track the progress weekly through assessments. An intervention cycle at this level of intensive support can last 8 or more weeks. The goal is to address those skill gaps while also maintaining the tier 1 standards-based delivery of those materials we've adopted. The intervention for a student in elementary school happens during the what I need or win block. That can be delivered by the general educator or an instructional specialist, which you saw that current staffing level of 38 FTE. In middle school and high school, this happens during an academic support course or section. This highly systematic process, all the data, all the entry, all the collection, and the guidance is overseen by a school's intervention team, SIT. That team is supported and trained by our NTSS department. We are moving, and you'll see an image in the bottom right-hand here of this slide, to a centralized data collection supported through Synergy. Some schools have already began. We can see this school has a number of intervention plans in place. This team tracks the data in order to support educators
factors on adjusting an intervention, extending an intervention. And they also look at that data to see when it's time to exit a student from intervention, because they've made progress. We've already do that data. As Chief Uno mentioned, we are happy to answer any of those questions that tracked last year's classes that we had across the K-12 level. And it compared fall 22 math growth to fall 23 math growth. We're happy to answer those questions, and thank you so much for your time sharing this with.
So really quickly on this, and I apologize if you either said or if it's in the data that you sent us that I haven't seen, but just how many students district-wide are in tier 3 intensive interventions?
Well, so the thing about tier 3 is short term, and so I'm a former elementary one. I had different kids, usually every 6 to 8 weeks, so kids kind of move in and out. This is the reason why we now have this synergy tracking tool, so we can start to see that, because that will live in the system and it will follow a student. So typically speaking, we hope to address every single child below that 20th percentile that doesn't already have a learning plan in place. We could probably get middle school, high school numbers for you, because that's a push track through a course in synergy. But until we have full usage of this, like the elementary really is kind of like touch and go, because it's such a wide range as kids are learning across the grades.
And so we could get you an estimate number.
Yeah, we can.
Yeah, I don't need the exact, I was sort of curious, and I love data, so I really, but I mean, I mean, not just because they're cool, but they actually give useful information you can use. And then you said we sort of track when students no longer need it, so, but that's also a way of really tracking the effectiveness of it, right? I mean, if we have students who sort of go into tier 3 or any of these, and are not sort of getting better, then do we have the ability to then take a step back? Maybe for one student it works really well, but for another student it's just not, and sort of reassess what they need.
And that's the sole purpose of the SID, to give them that guidance. It sometimes leads to a child not making progress that needs to have evaluation for learning disabilities. So it can lead to that, it can hopefully lead to successful completion. But yeah, that's really the point. And some kids can be, like I said, they can be intervention for 6 to 8 weeks. It could be, 2 cycles of that, it could be longer, and then again, like as we're tracking data, we determine other information. We also look at things like attendance. Attendance is huge. Are they attending? Does that need to be an intervention?
Let me, sorry, one more, maybe asking that, because again, I was sort of curious about magnitude, but can we confidently say that every child that needs an intervention at these levels gets it, or are there funding constraints here?
I mean, I would like to say yes, because we have the WIN block in place, especially at elementary. But as kids get older, middle school and high school intervention have not always been a thing. And that's actually a national thing. We're starting to see a lot of data come out about the effectiveness of intervention for older kiddos. But yeah, I mean, I think we all aspire to be at that level. We can give every single child an intervention if it's an active need.
So I think we're also in the process, and so I'll go back and emphasize what I said before. We will always run out, never have, I stumbled over my answer. We will never have enough resources if we're only emphasizing intervention. We need to continue to emphasize high quality core, tier 1 and tier 2 instruction, so that we have enough resources. Because we'll always have some students that require intervention. And so our process of onboarding and emphasizing high quality instructional materials and professional learning is what is also going to enable us to provide adequate level of intervention resources. So the two are hand in hand, it's not one or the other. So as we're building our secondary intervention program, which is being built and is in process, because not only do we have intervention classes and support services at middle school and high school, we also have our student success teams. I think I've said that right, that are in 9th grade, high school. So we have intervention processes and systems in secondary levels, in addition to at elementary. But our emphasis in the core is huge for us. And because like I said, and reiterated, both have to happen.
If with the emphasis on the core,
when I was looking through the presentation, it had the implementation data, so this is not, I know it's not a direct correlation between high quality instruction, the core instruction, but there were numbers on the consistent use and implementation of the curriculum, and like at high school it's 40%. And then the numbers were slightly better for the middle school. Let's see. 84% adoption of the ELA core resources, K5. But then at the middle school, 69% of middle school principals report consistent use and implementation of the curriculum. Is that a measure of whether that core instruction is being delivered? Or is there a better measure? Because if the premise is we really should focus on the tier 1 and the core, what is our measurement of whether all students are getting that? Is it these measurements here, or is it something else?
So these are measurements that are reported out by the principals at the secondary level. What we're doing right now, and this is what we shared in the math update, is that we are going on curriculum implementation walks, we're going on learning walks. I was just on a learning walk today at a middle school where we're walking together and we have a very concrete way. I think we answered this question that you were asking about when we go into the classroom, what are we looking for? So we're looking for pacing, we're looking for, is the lesson coming from the curriculum? We're looking for, within math, core action 1 is around focus, coherence, and rigor. Which part of, are they meeting those within core action 1? In ELA, we're looking at our text and the complexity of the text. And so we have a very detailed way that we're looking at instruction to say, is this meeting grade level, right? Are we implementing the curriculum is one question, and we're looking at that through pacing. And then 2, the integrity in which we're implementing it, how deep are we getting to? Because the curriculum is a new approach, right? And so even part of our look-fors, the first 2 are around the curriculum and grade level, and the teacher actions. We also have pieces around the student actions. So how are the students discussing? Are they discussing? Are they owning the majority of the work? And so that's what we're looking for, and we've been training central office leaders, coaches, building leaders around that way in which we're looking and walking so that we can say, this is where we're at in terms of implementation. And it's taking us a while to get to every place, right? And our goal is to walk every classroom by the end of the year for math and ELA to understand, not just to understand where we're at, but to understand how we're gonna allocate resources and supports in the classroom, at the site level, with the coach, with the building leader to improve instruction.
So thank you for that answer. I guess I'd written down also the same question that Director Scott had about, it's like how many students need it and how many students are receiving it. And I guess I have this like a similar question across that. And as a layperson versus an educator, and I think a lot of parents are, is like, how do we know, like how would a parent know, like my child is getting their core instruction, and therefore like that's the essential building block, and we're not going to need as many interventions because we've got that. It's like, to me, that's what it would be super helpful to be able to see, like how are you going to summarize all those walks and classroom visits into something that's like a tangible, like, hey, we have 15% of our high schools or 20% of our middle schools that's not happening in every classroom, and that's what we've just, got to focus on our resources on, since we can't do it at all. So I'm curious, like, how would we, like, as the board or the community, understand that, the summation?
Great student success committee episode you should watch on YouTube. In case you want to stay in and you don't feel like Netflix, right? It's about 2 hours long, it's great. I think that, wouldn't that kind of tie in a lot to the talk on our proficiency-based standards? Because, I mean, if you want to measure where students are at, it's kind of, that proficiency piece is huge, right? That implementation.
So I think it's like multiple things. It's the walks, it's understanding where we're at there. It's instructional rounds, as Dr. Franco mentioned, which is what we're doing with other building leaders. That's a building leader piece of looking at instruction. It's the standards-based grading, proficiency-based grading approach. That's also, we're working on building that out. And all of that is really deeply rooted in like a teacher really understanding their content and the way that in which they're teaching it, right? And so those are the shifts. And that's what the curriculum allows us to do, is to deliver the content in a way that is directly aligned to the Common Core standards. And it takes time. I didn't get to the last slide, but I have a, and I can share the slide. I don't want to like pause in the questions, but I share a little bit of an analogy about how we're thinking about it. So I don't know if you want me to close out this and then we can open up to full questions, or if you want to pause and ask more questions.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay, sorry, I got locked on my computer. Let me just make sure I'm not talking.
Is there value in the data for number of students in tier 2 and 3? Because my understanding is kids are constantly flowing in and out of tier 2 and 3, right? So it's, if they're flowing in and out, it's showing the system's working, right? Just kind of curious. Well, yeah, what that data would show.
Yeah, we can give you what we know as of today where students fall with tier 3. Tier 2 is more based on what's happening in the classroom and decision teachers are making for additional instruction based on classroom majors. And I mean, it starts with some MAP scores, but responding to classroom instruction, classroom curricular-based assessments, so that's harder to get, but they can do too.
Yeah, well, I was bouncing off the questions that Director Scott and from Edwards asked before about the numbers. The other question, just really quick before you move on, sorry. And hopefully it's my last question. Is there a system in place for like highlighting, I mean, because curriculum implementation, especially since we've had such a huge, wonderful record of not having solid curriculum in this district, is there a system in place where we can highlight the teachers that are having a lot of success with the new curriculum and offering opportunities for them to show other teachers what they've gained? Because honestly, that's one of the best ways to kind of spread curriculum, right?
You want to share a little bit about the Whitney Wisdom walk that you've been doing with the Spell schools and things like that?
Sure, yeah, I think there's a bunch of different ways we're approaching that. With the example of our Wit and Wisdom implementation, our new K-5 language arts adoption, we have 4 spotlight schools that were sort of like early, like they got a kind of extra infusion of early professional learning and have really willing school leaders and staffs. And so we've been building out spaces where we could eventually hopefully get to, Melissa's over here, some learning walks and spotlight showcase schools, trying to capture video of teachers. We've also had these guided observation for leaders visits where leaders from multiple schools come to one of our spotlight schools or to a partner school and get to walk through classrooms together and look at bright spots. I was just in a building today that's talking about doing peer observation within their own building, and that came out as the next step of the learning walk that I was on today, because there were some really stellar examples and they were talking about how can we just get the people in this building seeing one another. We are constantly trying to talk our teachers into feeling confident enough to be captured on video, because we go out. I mean, every time I leave a note for someone, that was amazing. How do you feel about getting caught on video with that? Because there's some shyness around that sometimes. And that's a culture I think we're working on building, is how do we get people to feel really confident opening up their doors or just getting caught and put on video so we can use it in PD, because that's a great strategy. We hear from teachers a lot that they want to see each other, and then we hear from teachers that they're really shy about showing off their stuff. So that's a culture I think we're working on building.
They want to hear from their neighbors, not.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I'm doing it for a friend. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, to add to that, for middle grades, 6-8, we've been in 41 classrooms in the last month and a half, really looking for some bright spots. We've identified about 11-ish really bright spots so far that we would love to engage with, build that peer open door lean in. Hopefully we can get the filming going, really shifting that culture. And we'll continue to be in classrooms, really diving in. And that's very valuable to see what's going on. And then, as I mentioned earlier, our survey, really hearing from our teachers, what are they needing most right now? Also really looking forward to this on-site professional learning opportunity later on this spring. We've done the big group opportunity, and now we really need to customize that, both looking at the data and also looking at where teams are at. They're in a little different spot depending on the school and the PLC, and so wanting to provide that space to be vulnerable about their individual needs.
I have, curious about the WIN block, when you take a tier 3, person with tier 3 needs. Is it the classroom teacher? Are there plenty of support people who can come in and work with small groups, or how is that working?
It varies. Sometimes it's a classroom teacher, sometimes like special educators will push in at the same time. Sometimes we have instructional specialists that are always push in, and sometimes there's multiple classroom teachers. They'll divide up into small groups and provide, like somebody that do small group instruction with some small group tier 3 students, while others do partner group instruction. So there's different ways our schools divide it up, but they divide it up, and it looks a little different in each school. I'm happy to go over it.
Yeah, I would love to do it.
Yeah, and what isn't different though is the curriculum. So as they just started rolling out year one, we developed kind of a field testing across the year to look at resources that align to those materials. So then we're building up the entire school capacity around the same, like I guess, way of teaching. So if it's foundations in K through 3 for the tier 1, we're doing foundations intervention and also another product in older grades. So it's the same keyword. So kids don't get confused that when they see the E card, it's E for ed, right? You know, so we're being really cognizant that it's fully aligned. So then it's building up this entire system to be lockstep with the same sort of way of teaching and leading on each other.
Or you can change schools and be powerful.
Yes, and sometimes our kids with tier 3 needs are having all, so that's really important.
You want me to close out this slide and then we can, so over the past few months, we have received questions around culturally responsive, culturally representative, culturally sustaining materials and instruction. We would like to share our approach to high quality teaching and learning with you, which includes grade level standards aligned, culturally affirming, deeply engaging and data driven, and is what we call our instructional framework, which you have in front of you. We wanted to share a little more about component 2, culturally affirming instruction, and our approach. We believe culturally affirming instruction affirms and honors communities of color, including their ethnic, racial, and linguistic identities, and develops all students' abilities to recognize and critique social inequities. We are also breaking down instructional planning into the following steps, and this process is the lesson unpacking image to the right on the slide. Teachers should first start with the curriculum and prioritize grade level learning. Next, they should use the instructional framework to bring additional pieces of culturally affirming and deeply engaging instruction into the curriculum lesson. During the first year of implementation, we have focused on professional learning around grade level standards aligned instruction, which is component 1 of the framework, and understanding the pedagogy of the curriculum. This year, in year 2, we are focused on a deeper understanding around grade level standards aligned, and indicator 3.7, which states students are actively engaged in the cognitive work of the lesson through reading, writing, speaking, listening, inquiry, or other modalities, and understanding where schools are at in terms of implementing the curriculum with integrity. And also using a common observation tool that I spoke to a few minutes ago to observe instruction. We are partnering with the Center for Black Student Excellence to build out culture in the classroom using our instructional framework, to create a shared definition and understanding, a set of look-fors, similar to how we're looking at grade level standards aligned instruction right now, and training and tools for leaders and teachers around culturally affirming, deeply engaging, and data-driven. We are focused on doing this for the following indicators: 2.3, 2.6, 3.2, 4.1, and 4.6. And as I have shared before, learning a new curriculum is like learning a new and complex recipe. The first time you use the recipe, you follow it step by step. You read it and you reread it. The next time you do it, you get a little better and you still need to reference the recipe. By the time you've used the recipe over and over 20 plus times, you have added new elements, become more familiar and confident with it, and have made adjustments based on who you are cooking for while you are still staying true to the intent and level of the recipe. This concludes our presentation for tonight, and we would be happy to answer any other questions that you may have.
Are you offering, like, paid, maybe during summer PD time for teachers to work on curriculum? Okay.
We have the last 2 summers as well.
Okay. Thank you.
And then any teacher, because that is during non-contract time, right? So any teacher who didn't receive it in the summer, they were able to go during an in-service day during contract time, and we posted those at the convention center so that we had enough space. So that's happened the last 2 years.
Do we know what the saturation rate is in terms of how many buildings or educators have adopted?
Yes, so that's throughout the slide deck on the grade bands, the implementation. So for secondary, we have the principal self-reported numbers on the implementation, and then K-5.
2.
So yeah, slides 3, 4, and 5. Each one of those have the implementation data. And as I shared, our goal is to get to every math and ELA classroom by the end of the year to understand, and not just, like, we don't want to just collect this information, right? We want to be able to figure out how we're supporting and how we're adjusting our professional learning, how we're pushing into PLCs, how we're working with coaches. We also work with the coaches every other week. And so for tomorrow in their training, they're actually going out in groups and they're looking at instruction the same way that we just looked at instruction today in a learning walk, so that we're all trying to be calibrated. But this takes, it takes practice. It takes time for them to be able to understand those nuances of the curriculum and to be able to go and look at instruction the same way.
So lower implementation numbers for high school because they started later? Just because more work to
I think, and I talked about this a little, I think it's a myriad of things. And mind you, it is a self-reported survey. And so we've had, I think it's important to note that obviously we've been through immense disruption. I do wonder if we would have had not lost that, what it would have been. I think it would have been obviously where we would need it to be. But at the same time, we're going to use this same level of survey towards the end of the year to kind of see where we're at. So hopefully we won't have any more disruption and we can actually get through this whole second semester of full learning and PD and those types of things and blocks and that type of thing because of building capacity. So I think it's at the high school level in particular. I think what we're seeing are pieces of active resistance. We're seeing we're there. We want to incorporate some pieces. I don't have all the information. I'm learning as we go. So I think there are folks on that level of continuum. And so it's our job at this point to figure out where you are at specifically. And what does the support, the accountability look like depending on where you sit on that continuum. But I think that can explain some of those pieces. But this is a data point, but we're also looking at what do the informal observations say? What does the learning walk data say? What does the instructional walk data say? Using that common through.
Okay, so I just have a lot of questions. I want to ask all of them tonight. And if I remember, I try to email. I usually forget by the time I leave, so I ain't gonna bank on that. So I know you said that so many schools have started using the curriculum. I'm just curious on what is the plan to increase schools and also who leads that work?
Yeah, so I can talk specifically, and I can have other folks chime in. So I would say from leading the work perspective and making sure implementation is happening, I would say that provides on offices. So the senior directors, assistant superintendents, working with principals to make sure that those pieces are happening. From a support PD perspective, that's really where we rely on the Office of Teaching and Learning, to making sure that if a senior director goes and talks with the principal and principal says, this is where I'm struggling. This person here that's struggling with this particular thing, this person here, I need some more tools, more specifics, either PD individually or PD as a whole staff. That's where Office of Teaching and Learning would come into. So it really is a concern.
And what's the plan to increase it to?
Yeah, so it's a few things. So there's the immediacy, I would say right now. And so I have a few things. The first is increasing clarity in regards to expectation. We've been, I think, pretty clear in terms of the expectations. This curriculum is fidelity. But it doesn't hurt to reinforce the message. I think the second piece is, we are doing things that are new this year that were interrupted that first semester. So when you're thinking about the 3 to 5, for example, classroom visits, the expectation, when we're so interrupted with that at the beginning of the year, getting into class, I'm looking forward to what that second piece is. With instructional rounds, we have learning walks using a common tool, so that's going to be a big piece in tabulating that data. And what I'd also say too is we need to develop for, again, getting a little bit more differentiated. So when we meet individually with principals, but say specifically at the secondary level, is, okay, so where are you on that continuum in regards to, say, staff implementation? What does that support look like? So it becomes more of a differentiated plan, but the understanding, the expectation is the curriculum is we believe wholeheartedly that fidelity of implementation of curriculum is an avenue to success.
Great, and that actually leads into another question. So at the last meeting, it was said that support and follow-ups with principals in schools are using curriculum. How does that, or what does that look like? Can you give me an example of how it's been used this year?
Sure. So I'll give you an example. If quarterly reviews, for example. So there are a few avenues to which senior directors work with building leaders. So it's the one-on-one visits consistently. It is during instructional rounds, and we're just completing or in the midst of, say, quarterly reviews. So, and Chris, I don't know if you want to talk about maybe an example of a quarterly review we've done recently, which he can talk specifically around. Quarterly reviews are looking at your skip goals and the instructional priorities, and then what does your data say? Except it's not specifically just with the principal, it's with the ILT, right? And so an ILT, which is...
Can you explain what ILT is?
Yeah, sorry, instructional. So it's instructional leadership team. And so the instructional leadership team is comprised of not only the principal, but staff, teachers within the building. And they work with the ILT to really help guide professional development throughout the course of the year. And so, Chris, I don't know if you want to, I don't want to put you on the spot, man.
No, not at all. I appreciate the question. Yeah, quarterly reviews are just, it's an opportunity for senior directors to work with the building leaders and teacher leads relative to the professional development that needs to be implemented. So they're looking at their teaching and learning cycle. They're also looking at the work that are being done in the professional learning communities or their PLCs. And again, it's that conversation of, is there alignment, right, within the departments, recognizing that it's an entry point, that in every department, everyone's in a little bit different spot. And so as a senior director, we get more information. And then outside of that meeting is when those one-on-one meetings that Dr. Franco spoke to are so important. So we can coach and support our principals, recognizing that, yes, they've got the entire continuum of early implementers to teachers that may be a little bit more resistant, and it's us working with them on how do we break through some of those barriers so that we can get to full implementation.
Great, that actually leads right into my other question. So what happens when a teacher is not using the curriculum? And then, and I know there's some steps that goes with that with corrective actions, and then what happens when they continue not to use the curriculum? I was at a school a couple weeks ago, or last week, where the teacher just literally said, I'm not using the curriculum. So how do we address that?
I'd say from, if it's that, to that level.
No, they told me.
Like, if it's absolutely to that level, then we're talking that's a discipline. That is, it goes to that level in regards to that, like complete, absolute refusal. Then to me, that is despite coaching and feedback, that's probably what it would take.
So a principal will have to do what if a teacher is not continuing doing the work?
We'll follow the HR process.
And that's the whole process that we've been through with a couple of the teachers.
Correct. Yeah, I mean, if it's, like I said, if it's to absolutely to that level, this is the expectation.
There was something here, you mentioned the CBSE. And I was kind of curious that the CBE is not up and running yet. So I'm just curious on when you anticipate the cultural partnership to form and what are your intended outcomes of that?
Yeah, so we're working with, we're working on developing culture in the classroom, which is part of the large project plan. That's one element of it. And so what we're doing is we want to, within the culture in the classroom, we want to build out these other pieces of the instructional framework because we've been so focused on grade level standards aligned that we're looking at those specific indicators that I've shared. We're going to develop a shared definition around those indicators, a set of look-fors. So just similar to the way that we're going into classrooms right now, and we're all aligning on the way that we're looking at instruction, we're going to do those for the other parts of the framework. And so through that process, we're going to have community events over the next several months where we have design teams that consist of PAT members, central office folks, and other stakeholder groups that sit on the design team. And then we're going to go and we have these community events where we're going to be showcasing and sharing our work and then getting feedback and iterate on that over time.
So it hasn't actually happened to reach the classroom yet. Is it something that you're going to be doing?
So we're building, because this is why I also wanted to share it this way, is like we're really working right now in this grade level standards line because we're not seeing, you saw our implementation data. So we're living in this piece and we're really specifically looking at 1.1. And 1.1 is really about grade level standards aligned instruction in math and ELA. And so when we go into classrooms, we have a very specific way we're looking at that. And so what we're going to be doing with culture in the classroom is we're going to be looking at indicators from the rest of the framework and building out those specific look-fors because these are very broad and lofty statements. So we want to know when we go into a classroom, what does this really look like and how do we design professional learning opportunities that uplift those look-fors so that we know that's going to happen, right? And so that's what we're building out with others. And we're being really intentional about that process. And we also, like I said, we're staying this year in the grade level standards aligned in conjunction with 3.7. 3.7 is the other one that we're working on, which is students are actively engaged in the cognitive work of the lesson through reading, writing, speaking, listening. Those are the areas of focus this year.
I got you. I guess we're going back to, because you mentioned the CBE piece and that what you guys are doing. If it's not if it's not up yet, I'm curious on how are you doing it?
Yeah, the project plan for culture in the classroom, there are several pieces of the plan, right? It's not up right yet, but like, yeah, so it was a mistake, yeah, so
Okay,
we're
gotcha.
working on that one component is this collaboration across offices, across stakeholder groups to uplift culture in the classroom and really define that. So that's what we're working on. Sorry, I missed.
Gotcha, no worries.
Sorry,
Yes.
just one really quick comment, really quick. It's kind of going back to what you said about, you know, what you do if a teacher doesn't go with the curriculum and kind of end up on the HR thing. I don't want to leave on that note, because I think I want to make space for, we often hear a lot of complaints, you know, when people have gripes, they're more likely to say something, so we often hear that. But the problem is there's also a lot of other teachers that are not speaking up. One of the things that, the ones we don't hear from not speaking up are the ones that are okay with new curriculum and standardized curriculum. And I want to make space for that because it's a workload issue. Like, for example, when we talk about, especially among our math, world language, and science teachers, we definitely see this a lot, but like, I want to just make space for saying this over and over again. That, like, for example, if I'm a Spanish teacher, Spanish 2 teacher, and I have Spanish 1 kids coming into my class, and they have 5 different teachers coming from, and then it's got 5 different places they're coming from, that's a lot more work for me, right? And I want to make sure, again, make space for that there's positives to this, and we ought to, I don't know where I'm going with this, but it's a workload issue. The goals, it's good to have common goals. How we get there, that's up to the teacher, right? When we talk about academic freedom, that's, you know, how we do that. I mean, obviously, paying attention to, you know, competencies and best practices, but yeah, so I want to make space for that.
Can I answer that?
Yeah.
I think
I
it's
don't think that was a question, but you can answer it.
It's a workload issue, and for us, it's also an exciting opportunity for teachers to have more bandwidth to focus on students rather than curriculum development and design. In other words, we're providing a comprehensive foundation of what to teach, how to assess, with the understanding that we want teachers to have a critical lens and refine, but we really want to focus on instruction and then responding to students' needs, differentiating, providing multiple entry points for our multilingual learners, making sure that the tier 2 interventions can also be happening. If all the effort is around developing curriculum, it doesn't leave a whole lot of time for other pieces that are also critical to teaching. So that's a little bit of a shift. So it's both a workload issue and where the teacher attention is.
Thank you. Answering my non-question.
May I add something as well? One of the things that I think that we are also trying to do is also think about how students actually learn, right? Because how a student does learn information is going to have to match how the teacher presents information. And right now, there is some kind of misalignment there because we see a lot of standard deliver where in many, many cases, students are used to being animated and because they're on video games and all kinds of things all day long. So somehow we have to get them into a rhythm where the classroom becomes more of a symphony and we create conditions for every child to learn. And then the teacher has more flexibility around PLCs, because a lot of this work that you just addressed as a workload issue is work that can be done in the PLC.
Yeah.
So what you do in the PLC at grade level is you create one lesson, and I'm just giving an example. You create one lesson for maybe all 4th grade teachers, then it's incumbent upon each 4th grade teacher to look at the students that they serve. So I may have largely gifted kids, tag kids, and somebody else may have largely ESL kids. So how do I take that one lesson and tweak it to meet the needs of my kids? What are the themes that strand through so that if you go from your ESL class to your tag class to your regular class, you can still see that there is a consistency in the instructional practice and the methodology. But right now, we're not necessarily there yet, and I think that's where we need to go so that we can lift everybody. Once we lift the water, right, all the boats in the bay rise as well. But it does have to do with a lot of practice around PLCs, the expectations, and clearly knowing your content and how your students learn.
I just have 3 more questions and try to get it done, so we can be done by 9:30.
Chair Hall, it is 9:30.
Is it 9:30?
God, I'm just wondering if we can take remaining questions online. We still have a consent agenda, we have union testimony.
Okay, I'm just asking one more question. I'm not gonna email these, so I know I'm not gonna email.
Maybe we can just put them on the record.
Yeah, okay, I like that. So, this is what I wanna answer though, is how do a teacher identify a student lived experience? And now it's part of your culturally affirming 2.1. Why are you looking for that out?
2.1, is that what you're saying, indicator 2.1?
Yeah, look at the 2.1. Educator indicator. But why are you looking for that? I'll just ask the 2 questions. How much time do we until we see results from the implementation? And how does kids get into the win block? And what data do teachers use to put a kid in win block? Hold up, just put it on the record, but the other one I want to get an answer.
The one you were asking to have answered is the one around how do teachers
Yeah,
know about the lived experiences of students? Is that the question you're asking?
Yeah, how do teachers identify a student lived experience?
I mean, what I've observed in high schools is a variety of things. Usually the very beginning of the year is set up as a time for building of culture and community in the classroom. I've seen teachers use very effectively writing as a vehicle by which students share stories about themselves. We typically begin lessons at the high school level with a warm up or a connector of some sort. And it's also about a feeling and a stance and being present at events, being there during lunch, welcoming students, chatting with students during passing time. So both formal and informal kind of structures and approaches. I'll just highlight that one of our key strategies at the high school level is having 9th grade success teams. These are collaborative, cross-disciplinary teams of teachers who share the same cohort of students. So if a math teacher, social studies teacher, a language arts teacher, perhaps a science teacher, they will share a cohort of students, and a couple of times a week, they come together to talk about their students, talk about successes, talk about challenges, exchange information, generate common strategies for how to support students across different content areas, because we recognize that student sense of belonging and student sense of connection is absolutely key at all levels, and that is especially true in 9th grade. So maybe a few of those examples.
Adults have to develop relationships with students and know who they are. So if I could indulge the board just a 30-second reflection before we move on. You can't have a high-performing school district if there's no instructional coherence. You simply can't. And I know when I first started my tenure and interviewed school leaders in particular, the one thing they wanted to emphasize is that we had to make instruction a priority. And I mean, just even here this evening, but I could say on a day-to-day basis, historically, you didn't see this level of collaboration across departments. You got principal supervisors who are observing things every day in schools, coming back and collaborating with our teaching and learning team. And we've only been talking about half of the pyramid. The other half of the pyramid is the non-academic tiered supports that our students also need because they're a whole child or youth. And so the combination of those 3 legs, is what helps bring alignment across our departments. And this is a continuum. This is a journey that we've been on. You have to provide the tools and the materials first. We found a way to leapfrog via the bond to adopt in an accelerated fashion across grade levels and content areas curriculum. That is itself revolutionary. We had 85 campuses each following their own sort of direction in all of these areas. And for the first time, we have a common grade level standards aligned material. Making sure there's fidelity to that implementation is just an initial step. We have to encourage, we have to support, we have to coach. We are building communities of practice in our PLCs, in our rounds, in our learning walks. It's not just teachers that need to have an understanding of how to use the material. Our school leaders need to know how to observe, support, and coach for it. We need to sort of, once materials and the correct training and coaching is provided, then we move into an accountability sort of phase of, how do we sort of raise expectations? Because the material's the material, it's really in the pedagogical moves that our teachers make every single day, particularly for the diverse learners in front of them, which we know has been lacking for Black, Native, multi-emergent people, and special needs students. And so, we're trying to get a solid base of the pyramid with our tier 1, or we'll always be providing supports and interventions and spinning our wheels. So that is the work that a district has to work through. And literally, the convention center has been filled with hundreds of teachers on any one of these given days, trying to get that initial baseline training. But it takes 2-3 years to do a proper rollout and get that fidelity to 95% or greater. And we have to then calibrate our school leaders by going around in groups and making sure that the feedback that they give to any given teacher, that we would all say the same kinds of things in the way of feedback, because we all see it similarly. So I just encourage teams, the board, to sort of stay on this path. There aren't any shortcuts. You can't start with accountability. You got to do the materials, the training. It's curriculum, it's instruction, it's assessment to diagnose, the continuous improvement loops, and then you can move into that accountability piece. And if you do that, then you can expect to see more dramatic acceleration in student outcomes.
Thank you.
I just want to highlight the thing you said, collaboration. That's huge. Because I remember before and after NGSS, there was way more collaboration after NGSS. Yep. And that's where teachers learn.
Thank you, guys. We're gonna move into the consent agenda. Board will now vote on consent agenda. Board members, is there any items you would like to pull for discussion? We will set aside for next time we meet. Hearing none, Ms. Bradshaw, are there any changes to the consent agenda?
No.
All right, board members.
So.
Director Scott moved, Director Government work. Second. No board discussion, any more discussion? Hearing none, the board will now vote on resolution 6837 through 6840 and 6843. All in favor, please indicate by saying yes.
Yes. Yes.
Hearing none, hearing no abstentions, Student Director Timothy voting.
Yes.
All right. Vote passed 6-0. And then next we have comments from our union partners.
Good evening. My name is Elizabeth Held, and I'm the interim president of PFSP. I can't tell you how odd it is to be sitting and speaking to your empty chairs in a nearly empty boardroom, but nevertheless, we're here. I'd like to congratulate our union siblings at SEIU for having officially ratified their new contract tonight. We knew it was a long time coming and a hard fight. We know because we've fought alongside them, fighting for living wages for our members and for recognition for longevity employees, some of whom have worked here for well over 20 years. And to our brothers and sisters in DCU, we know you're only just beginning your negotiations. We know how important your work is in keeping our schools safe for our students and for the other staff who are with them every day, and we look forward to your successes at the table. I also want to acknowledge the admirable grace and continued flexibility in a year that has already demanded so much flexibility that have been displayed by staff who've been displaced to other buildings as an impact of this past winter storm. We know just as many staff have worked to express their hospitality as they welcome staff and students who've worked this past month in absorbing them into their buildings. It's clear to us that the storm has only exacerbated years of underinvesting in the facilities at the expense of our students and staff members' safety. Concerns about the fungal spores, for example, at Creston that displaced the deaf and hard of hearing program were reported long before the storm. We've heard a lot tonight about the necessity of adequately funding schools, and this is, of course, very important. You can't pour from an empty cup. But what's just as important is continuing to work to prioritize the funding that we do have. Our staff, our students, and our communities deserve safe working conditions and safe learning conditions. Physically safe buildings, safety provided through adequate training, and safety and adequate staffing to be able to provide the services that our students need. Thank you.
Hi again, everybody. I just wanted to come up here, express support and for Elizabeth and everything Elizabeth said. I totally agree with all of that, and once again, I feel like it's my duty to point out that it is after 9:30. Your union partners have to be up usually around 5 o'clock in the morning. We've mentioned this multiple times, and it seems we're getting the message about how you feel about our partnership that we always end up at the end of the board meetings. So I will leave you with that. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you.
I just want to thank you for being here tonight, and I want to note, I also find it odd that we have to be virtual, and I think it's unfortunate that a small group of people were so intent on shutting down both our ability to hold our meeting, but also our ability to hear from you in person. So thank you for staying and testifying, and I hope next time we can do it in person.
All right, any other board business? All right, we are adjourned.
It's all free run.
That's it.